Chapter 37:37. Lin Feng grabbed the purple crystal in his hand. Then he studied it carefully and found that the purple crystal contained an extremely powerful and strange energy. This purple crystal is the energy crystal condensed from that monster's body. Lin Feng said in surprise. This kind of purple crystal had an extremely significant effect on a cultivator's improvement. Refining this kind of purple crystal, his cultivation could greatly increase in a short period of time. Lin Feng put away the purple crystal. This place was very dangerous. It was not a place to refine the purple crystal, and Lin Feng still had an emperor-level divine eating fruit that he had yet to refine. If he could refine the Emperor Realm Divine eating fruit, then Lin Feng's battle strength would also greatly increase. Lin Feng flew in the direction of Old Monster Yan's bookstore. When he arrived, he found that Old Monster Yan's bookstore had been destroyed. He didn't know where Old Monster Yan had gone. There was still no news of this old monster, and the cursed doll had also disappeared without a trace. Lin Feng had always been curious about what the cursed doll was looking for, but now it seemed that it was impossible to know what the cursed doll was looking for the time being. Lin Feng left the town. He flew towards the depths of the Bitterhan province. The town itself was only in the outer area of the Bitterhan province. Bitterhan province. It was vast but sparsely populated. Resources were scarce. In the end, it had something to do with the laws of heaven and earth here. This was the most barren province, not suitable for the cultivation of heavenly materials and earthly treasures. Moreover, the environment of this province was harsh, and the terrifying creatures in the endless ghost sand would come out to wreak havoc every few years. Therefore, the Bitterhan province was an extremely unsuitable place to live. In the past, this was a place of exile. However, as time passed, many forces were formed. Lin Feng flew for a long time. Everywhere was a barren world, lifeless. It was rare to see a forest with green trees. In the end, Lin Feng stopped in a lonely mountain range. He opened a cave abode and planned to cultivate here for a while. Lin Feng sealed the cave abode with a restriction. Then, he began to refine the divine eating fruit. The laws in Lin Feng's body were rather special. Many cultivators only had one emperor law when they broke through to the God-Emperor realm. As their cultivation level increased, the number of emperor laws they had increased as well. When he reached the peak of the God-Emperor realm, the emperor laws would fuse together once again. Then, the God-Emperor laws would start to transform into the immortal Emperor laws. When a cultivator's emperor law successfully transforms, a God-Emperor law would eventually transform into an immortal emperor law. As his cultivation base increased, the number of immortal emperors and emperors gradually increased. Thereafter, breaking through to the imperial emperor realm, emperor sect, ancestor, the sage emperor. This was the case for the emperor lord realm. Lin Feng was different from ordinary people. After Lin Feng broke through to the God-Emperor realm, he had two paths to choose from. The first path was the path taken by other cultivators. The number of emperor laws in his body increased as his cultivation increased. When he broke through to the next realm, the emperor laws would fuse into one and complete the transformation. Then, as his cultivation increased, his emperor laws continued to increase. For this kind of breakthrough, the emperor's laws changed from one to many, and then from many to one. The second path was to condense an emperor law. No matter what realm his cultivation base increased to, he would only condense one emperor law. All his power would be fused into this emperor law. This was a secret technique recorded in the immemorial dragon-esque elephant art. This secret technique originated from the supreme Great Tao of Taoism. 1 gave birth to 2, 2 gave birth to 3, and 3 gave birth to all things. 1. It was the foundation of the great Tao. So, when he broke through to the next realm, such as the God-Emperor realm, the Immortal Emperor realm, the Emperor realm, and so on, the first Emperor laws were all one. The Emperor laws that followed were all transformed from the word one. Therefore, the secret technique recorded in the immemorial dragonesque elephant art was to make these Emperor laws always be one, never to be differentiated. According to the immemorial dragonesque elephant art, when a cultivator's cultivation base increased, the Emperor laws would be differentiated, and the differentiation of the Emperor laws was related to the increase of the cultivator's own energy. In other words, the Emperor laws were also transformed from these energies. However, when the Emperor laws were differentiated, they would consume energy. Once the energy was consumed, the increase in battle strength would not achieve the desired effect. If the Emperor laws were not differentiated, these energies would all fuse into the original Emperor laws, and no energy would be consumed. So, the increase in battle strength was even greater. This secret technique was incomparably miraculous. It was created by the supreme dragonesque elephant. Lin Feng learned of this secret technique. Without hesitation, he chose the second method to condense the Emperor laws. He also broke through. The second method, perhaps the increase in battle strength would be much higher than the first method. Of course, because the Emperor laws were not differentiated, the Emperor laws in Lin Feng's body would become thicker and thicker. Just like now, an ordinary immortal Emperor law was as thick as a thumb. But the immortal Emperor law that Lin Feng condensed was as thick as a mountain. It floated above the Pill Sea. It was like a huge mountain floating in the air. It was really shocking. One had to know, the current Lin Feng, he had just broken through to the Immortal Emperor realm. He was only at the first level of the Immortal Emperor realm. There were still the second level of the Immortal Emperor realm to the 10th level of the Immortal Emperor realm. As Lin Feng continued to break through, the Immortal Emperor law that was as thick as a mountain, it would definitely become thicker and thicker. Lin Feng swallowed the divine, eating fruit. Then, he refined the divine, eating fruit. There were actually 36 Emperor laws inside. This made Lin Feng ecstatic. After refining these Emperor laws, his battle prowess would definitely increase greatly. Lin Feng refined all 36 Emperor laws into the Emperor law that was as thick as a mountain above the Pill Sea. The Emperor law that was as thick as a mountain suddenly became several times thicker. The power it contained, it was also more terrifying. After feeling the increase of the powerful magic power in his body, Lin Feng couldn't help but smile. Refining the divine, eating fruit, as expected, it could quickly increase his battle strength. Unfortunately, there was only one divine eating demon here. If there were a few more, they would all be killed. The increase in battle strength would be even greater. Swish! A light flashed in his hand. The purple crystal was summoned by Lin Feng. Lin Feng began to refine the purple crystal. Under the refinement of the immemorial dragonesque elephant art, the purple crystal gradually turned into the purest energy. The energy was all devoured by Lin Feng. As the energy of the purple crystal was devoured by Lin Feng, Lin Feng's magic power became purer and purer. The Emperor Law also began to transform. Finally, Lin Feng's realm broke through from the first level of the Immortal Emperor realm to the second level of the Immortal Emperor realm. However, this kind of breakthrough, it was far from stopping. Lin Feng continued to refine the purple crystal in his body. When all the purple crystal was refined by Lin Feng, when all the energy was absorbed by Lin Feng, Lin Feng's realm completed another transformation. Chapter 37-38. This purple crystal actually allowed me to break through 2 levels in a row. Lin Feng stood up, his face full of shock. The purple crystal's increase in cultivation was too significant. Perhaps he could hunt more creatures that walked out of the endless ghost sand. He wanted to see if there were crystals similar to the purple crystal in the bodies of those creatures. If there were any, that would be great. He could use those crystals to continuously increase his cultivation. Thinking of this, Lin Feng's face revealed a smile. Of course, not all living beings could be hunted down and killed. There were strong and weak creatures that walked out of the endless ghost sand. For example, the creature that Lin Feng had killed earlier should be a relatively weak one. As for the blood cloud and the dark corrosion, that huge and terrifying monster was an extremely powerful creature. If he encountered a creature of this level, he would naturally stay as far away as possible. After making up his mind, Lin Feng began to search for such a terrifying creature. However, it was not so easy to find such a terrifying creature. For the next half a month, Lin Feng did not find such a terrifying creature. Until half a month later, Lin Feng saw a small city, because it was already night time. Therefore, Lin Feng wanted to enter the small city to rest for a night before leaving. However, when he arrived outside the small city, Lin Feng smelled blood in the air. His expression could not help but become solemn. Lin Feng entered the small city. When he entered, he saw corpses everywhere on the streets. It was simply corpses everywhere. Men, women, old and young. They were all killed. The other party's methods were incomparably cruel and ruthless. However, after killing these people, the other party did not eat their corpses. However, Lin Feng soon discovered that some of the people's blood had been sucked dry. Their bodies had also become hard and dry corpses. What's going on? Lin Feng frowned. He felt that the situation was rather strange. So many people had died, but why were there only a few corpses that had their blood sucked dry? And 80 to 90% of the corpses, were they safe and sound? These people who have had their blood sucked dry should be people with special bloodlines. The demon lord said, after all, there were too few people with special bloodlines in the world. Anyone with a special bloodline would become a super genius once their bloodline was awakened. The other party is purposefully absorbing the bloodline. Special bloodlines were the most powerful. Therefore, those creatures with mortal blood were only killed, but their blood was not devoured. Lin Feng said in a deep voice, "That's right. That's exactly it." The demon lord nodded. The other party's methods were simply too cruel. Such methods were simply outrageous. However, if the existence that had attacked was connected to the living beings in the endless ghost sand, all of this seemed to be very normal. Lin Feng walked in the deathly silent city. He wanted to find some survivors. However, there was nothing to be gained. City God Temple. Lin Feng saw a temple in the small city. It was very old and worshipped the Xingwang god. City God. In the era of titled gods, it was an amazing god, because in the past, almost every city would have a temple for city god. Therefore, it was obvious City God was a terrifying existence. However, as time passed, the era of titled gods ended. City God's temple was gradually demolished. Nowadays, it was very rare to see a temple for City God. Even for Lin Feng, this was the first time he saw City God's temple. Lin Feng entered the temple. There were many corpses in the temple. Previously, many people had worshipped City God, but this time, City God was unable to protect these people. I've heard that many cities and towns are protected by divine temples. Throughout the endless years, the creatures that walked out of the endless ghost sand were unable to destroy those ancient cities and towns. However, why is it different this time? So many cities have been destroyed. Did something happen? Lin Feng could not help but frown as he pondered. The city god statue in the city god temple was destroyed. Lin Feng did not discover anything in the city god temple. He walked out of the Xing Wang temple. In an instant, black clouds covered the sky and enveloped the entire city. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the dark clouds. It seemed that some terrifying living being was about to appear, pretending to be mysterious. "Come out." Lin Feng said coldly, "Jiji Jaiji." A sinister voice came from the dark clouds. Next, a terrifying being surrounded by endless lightning appeared in Lin Feng's line of sight. Lin Feng looked over. He discovered that the terrifying being had a body like a human, a head like a ghost, a body like a bat, and sharp claws. It was extremely ugly. It was extremely evil. What kind of monster is this? Does it not look like anything? Lin Feng curled his lips. The monster could hear the sarcasm in Lin Feng's words. Its eyes could not help but reveal dense killing intent. "Lowly living being, you dare to humiliate me? You are courting death." The monster's voice was as cold as ice. "I think you are the one courting death. You should have a crystal in your body, right? It's a good opportunity to kill you and devour your crystal." Lin Feng directly soared into the sky. "No wonder I felt the same kind of aura from you. It turns out that you killed a living being that walked out of the endless ghost sand and refined its crystal. Kid, your good luck will end today. I am not an ordinary living being from the endless ghost sand. I am the Demon King Subaru." The monster roared and suddenly flapped its wings. Then its body was as fast as lightning as it charged towards Lin Feng. F***CK, so fast. After seeing the monster's speed, Lin Feng was shocked. The monster's speed was so fast that it defied the heavens. Even Lin Feng. He was ashamed of his inferiority. In a breath's time, the monster had already charged in front of Lin Feng. Then it began to attack Lin Feng. Its sharp claws directly grabbed towards Lin Feng. Seeing that it was about to grab Lin Feng's body moved horizontally to the left. Then he raised his right leg and kicked towards the monster. Crack! However, the monster reached out and grabbed Lin Feng's right leg. Weak. Really too weak. The monster's other claw slashed towards Lin Feng's thigh. His claws were extremely sharp. The monster wanted to cut off Lin Feng's thigh directly. The situation was critical. Lin Feng's right hand slashed out a sword aura towards the monster. The monster felt the sword aura from Lin Feng and did not dare to be careless. It hurriedly extended its claws to block. Lin Feng took advantage of this opportunity and suddenly shook his right leg. It shook off the monster's claws. Then Lin Feng turned into a yin-yang diagram. Chapter 37-39. Lowly human, you're definitely not this king's opponent. The Devil King Subaru roared. Its sharp claws directly slapped towards the yin-yang Dao diagram, formed by Lin Feng. Clang, clang, clang. The two sides collided again and again. Every collision caused a loud clang sound. It shook the heavens and the earth. Even the void was shattered. However, Lin Feng's attack was unable to break through the Devil King Subaru's defense. This guy was simply too powerful. It was even more powerful than Lin Feng imagined. So, Lin Feng turned into his original body and quickly retreated. Subaru's gloomy eyes looked at Lin Feng and said, "Lowly human, this lord can feel your powerful bloodline. That's great. These powerful bloodlines have a huge effect on this lord's improvement. If this lord devours you, his cultivation will definitely increase greatly." Lin Feng sneered and said, "Daydreaming." Kikik. Was he daydreaming? You'll know once you experience this lord's true attack. Subaru laughed sinisterly. Its pair of huge wings flapped. Every time it flapped, it would form a huge storm. And those storms, they were densely packed and formed by endless wind blades. Any wind blade could easily tear through the void. So many wind blades, concentrated together. It was so powerful, it was simply unimaginable. The Devil King Subaru's attack was indeed very powerful. That terrifying storm. It surrounded Lin Feng. Lin Feng took out his ruler's armor. The ruler's armor covered his entire body. At the same time, Lin Feng quickly rushed towards the Devil King Subaru. When those wind blades slashed towards him, all of them slashed onto Lin Feng's ruler's armor. The ruler's armor's powerful defense. It blocked the wind blades' attack. Finally, Lin Feng rushed out of the storm and charged towards the Devil King Subaru. Lin Feng took out more than 10 powerful magic treasures. He controlled more than a dozen powerful magic treasures to attack Demon King Subaru. The Demon Abyss, burying billions of gods and Buddhas. In the face of the attacks from Lin Feng's top-tier true treasures, Demon King Subaru once again performed a powerful mystic art. A huge abyss appeared in front of him. That abyss was boundlessly huge. The abyss was pitch black. Anyone who saw the abyss would be overwhelmed with shock. That abyss, it directly suppressed Lin Feng's dozens of magic treasures, and Lin Feng himself. That abyss seemed to want to devour Lin Feng and the dozen or so powerful magical treasures. Devour everything. Situation. It was extremely dangerous. Once he was swallowed by the abyss, who knew what terrible things would happen? Lin Feng quickly traveled through the void. He wanted to avoid being swallowed by the abyss. However, to his horror, he discovered that the abyss had already enveloped him, and there was no way to avoid it. Brat, to be able to be buried in my demon abyss, consider yourself lucky from your previous life, Demon King Subaru said, sinisterly. Lucky your entire family. Lin Feng couldn't help but curse. The next moment, he was swallowed by the demon abyss. His dozens of powerful magic treasures were also swallowed by the demon abyss. The creatures in the endless ghost sand were indeed terrifying. Most importantly, the creatures in the endless ghost sand all possessed some extremely terrifying techniques. These means were things that cultivators of the same level couldn't master. Therefore, under the situation of the same level, the combat power of cultivators, there was no way to fight against those terrifying creatures in the endless ghost sand. At this moment, Lin Feng was in trouble when he was swallowed by the demon abyss. Lin Feng discovered that the demon abyss was rapidly closing. This was an extremely terrifying scene. If the demon abyss was completely closed, he was still trapped in the demon abyss. Then, he might not be able to get out anymore. Lin Feng knew that the situation was extremely dangerous. In the darkness, he hurriedly activated the Sovereign Emperor blood. Lin Feng's Sovereign Emperor blood was awakened. The blade of God in his dantian flew out from Lin Feng's dantian. The blade of God, the energy blade formed after the Sovereign Emperor blood, was deeply awakened. It was rumored the blade of God could communicate with the legendary ancient killing weapon called the Blade of God. The Blade of God quickly flew towards the demon abyss. It wanted to shatter the demon abyss. At this moment, terrifying laws were flying towards the Blade of God, trying to destroy Lin Feng's Blade of God. However, the Blade of Dominion was simply too powerful. It directly cut off the laws that were blocking its way. Immediately, it flew to the edge of the demon abyss as fast as lightning and attacked the demon abyss that was about to close. Bang! It was as if a heaven-defying, peerless weapon had attacked the demon abyss. The demon abyss. it directly blasted a huge hole in it. Seeing this scene, Lin Feng's face was filled with joy. He quickly rushed out. Lin Feng also took out a dozen extremely powerful weapons and rushed out with him. The Blade of God. It didn't slow down. It quickly attacked Demon King Subaru. Break! Demon King Subaru roared and swung his claws towards the Blade of God. Demon King Subaru's claws were extremely hard. His claws were his most powerful weapon. However, this time, facing the attack of the Blade of God, Demon King Subaru's claws couldn't block the attack of the Blade of God, because when the Blade of God was about to collide with Demon King Subaru's claws, it actually split into three. This was the terrifying ability of the Blade of God. This ability was called the Blade of God. It was rumored that the Blade of God could split into 99 blades. But now, splitting the Blade of God into three was the limit of Lin Feng's current ability. Clang! One of the Blade of God clashed with Demon King Subaru's claws. The other two Blades of God. Instead, it landed on Demon King Subaru's body. Pooh! Pooh! 2 consecutive ripping sounds could be heard. Demon King Subaru's body was directly pierced through. Fresh blood instantly gushed out. I'm injured. I'm actually injured. Demon King Subaru let out an angry roar. But now that his body was injured, he didn't dare to stay and turned around to escape. At this moment, Lin Feng rushed over. The supreme aura enveloped Demon King Subaru. Demon King Subaru was sent flying by the supreme aura. Lin Feng then used the supreme reincarnation fist. He directly punched Demon King Subaru's body. Bang! After receiving Lin Feng's terrifying punch, Demon King Subaru's body directly exploded. Chapter 3740. Demon King Subaru was killed by Lin Feng. Lin Feng discovered there was also a crystal in Subaru's body, but the crystal in Subaru's body, it was actually a black crystal. It was a different color from the crystal in the monster that was killed before. Of course, although the color was different, the effect was the same. This black crystal also contained a boundless amount of energy. If he were to refine those energies, he would be able to refine them. To cultivators, it would have an extremely great effect. Lin Feng kept the black crystal into his mountain river ring. He didn't stay in the small city and quickly left. In the following period of time, Lin Feng killed 3 terrifying creatures that walked out of the endless ghost sand, and Lin Feng's realm had also risen to the 8th level of the Immortal Emperor realm. As his realm continued to rise, wanting to break through, it was also getting more and more difficult. When he first started to refine a piece of crystal, his realm had even risen by 2 levels. Now that he refined a crystal, it was difficult to even raise his realm by 1 level. Lin Feng's own savings were too huge. The crystal in the bodies of the ordinary creatures that walked out of the endless ghost sand had less and less effect on Lin Feng's cultivation. So, now, Lin Feng needed to hunt even more powerful creatures in order to raise his realm. However, Lin Feng had killed 5 creatures that walked out of the endless ghost sand. This matter had already attracted the attention of some terrifying creatures. A terrifying creature had its eyes on Lin Feng. It was a black snake. It wasn't particularly long, only about 1 meter long. But this black snake was incomparably terrifying. When the black snake first appeared, Lin Feng even thought that this black snake was just an ordinary small snake. After all, black snakes weren't rare in the forest. However, when this black snake attacked Lin Feng realized how terrifying this black snake was. This was an existence so terrifying that even Lin Feng was shocked. Although it wasn't as powerful as the blood cloud, the dark erosion, or that huge and terrifying creature, it was still a powerful being. But this black snake, he had definitely reached the level of an emperor lord. As expected of a creature that had walked out of a land of death, like the endless ghost sand, whether it was the Tianwu continent, the 9 prefectures, the heavenly sage great world, the exiled great world, or other great worlds. The land of death. It was definitely the most terrifying place. It was fine if the creatures inside didn't come out. Once he was born, it was unimaginably terrifying. Lin Feng was no match for Black Snake. He was almost killed by the Black Snake. Furthermore, he was poisoned. Even with the white jade toads' help, Lin Feng was almost poisoned to death. Fortunately, Lin Feng's physique was strong enough to save his life. And now, Lin Feng was fleeing as fast as he could. The Black Snake was in hot pursuit. Black Snake's eyes were filled with contempt. This Black Snake was so powerful, it was naturally psychic. From time to time, the Black Snake would spit out dense flaming arrows towards Lin Feng. This Black Snake was a fire attribute poisonous snake. Thus, it was able to unleash a fire attribute attack. And the fire attribute attack contained a highly toxic poison. You're really haunting me. Lin Feng's expression was gloomy as he quickly dodged the incoming flaming arrows. Although he had dodged the attacks of the flaming arrows, Lin Feng knew that if this continued, it would be extremely disadvantageous for him. Because some of the toxins that had settled in his body were toxins that even the white jade toad was unable to resolve. These toxins required Lin Feng to personally resolve them. Therefore, he had to quickly get rid of this Black Snake and find a place to resolve this poison. Or else, the situation would be very bad. However, for now, Lin Feng had yet to think of a way to get rid of the Black Snake. This Black Snake, too powerful, although the Black Snake wasn't good at speed. However, its strength was there. With such a powerful strength, its speed was naturally extremely fast. This was also the reason why Lin Feng couldn't get rid of the Black Snake. Rumble! Suddenly, Lin Feng heard an earth-shaking noise coming from the front. It was like the sound of raging waves hitting the shore. Lin Feng was shocked. That sound. Listen. It seemed to be the sound of a river rushing. Lin Feng's eyes suddenly lit up. The Black Snake was terrifying. However, the Black Snake wasn't without weaknesses. This Black Snake was a fire attribute creature. Water countered fire. Therefore, the Black Snake was restrained by water. Now, Lin Feng heard the sound of the river surging. It meant that there was a big river nearby. That big river, it would definitely restrain the Black Snake. Perhaps he could use the river's restraint on the Black Snake to avoid the Black Snake's pursuit. Lin Feng's speed was very fast. He was gradually approaching the big river. The Black Snake seemed to know what Lin Feng was thinking. Therefore, it became irritable. It began to attack Lin Feng crazily. Lin Feng used his speed to the extreme, avoiding the Black Snake's attack. Finally, he saw the big river. It turned out to be a cold river. It was very cold, 10 miles around the cold river. It was all frozen. However, the cold river didn't freeze. This was because the current of the cold river was too fast. Therefore, although the temperature was extremely low, it couldn't freeze. After seeing the cold river, Lin Feng was overjoyed. The river restrained the Black Snake. What's more, this was not an ordinary river. It was a cold river. It restrained the Black Snake. It was even more serious. Therefore, as long as he dived into the cold river, he would definitely be able to avoid the Black Snake's pursuit. At this time, the Black Snake made a strange sound. It seemed to be chanting a spell. And Lin Feng found that the energy between heaven and earth had become chaotic. The Black Snake must want to launch some kind of powerful attack. or else. This would never happen. Lin Feng's face darkened slightly. He rushed towards the cold river with all his strength. When Lin Feng was a few dozen meters away from the cold river, a huge ball of energy condensed and formed. That ball of energy was 100 meters in diameter. Inside the ball of energy, it was filled with the power of flames, in addition to the power of flames. And it also contained the power to distort time and space. That power to distort time and space was the most terrifying. Lin Feng couldn't help but take a deep breath. The black snake's attack was too terrifying. If it hit him, he would probably die. That huge ball of energy exploded in an instant, and the destructive energy flooded towards Lin Feng. At this critical moment, Lin Feng used the great space teleportation technique, instantly arrived above the cold river, and then drilled into the cold river. The power to destroy the heavens and the earth erupted. Towering waves surged forth. However, fortunately, Lin Feng escaped into the cold river one step ahead of time. Therefore, he avoided the black snake's terrifying attack. Seeing Lin Feng disappear, the black snake let out a series of sharp and ear-piercing cries. This terrifying existence was exceptionally angry. The black snake continuously spat out several huge balls of energy at the cold river to vent the anger in his heart. But those balls of energy were unable to destroy this cold river that was thousands of meters wide. It only set off a few huge waves. The black snake glanced at the cold river with a gloomy expression. Then, no longer staying, Chapter 3741, Rumble, Rumble. In the gloomy forest, a group of cultivators rode on strange beasts and came through the sky. Loud sounds came from heaven and earth. It was extremely shocking. Every giant beast was incomparably terrifying, and their aura was suffocating. And there was actually a cultivator sitting on each of those giant beasts. There were men and women, old and young. Among these people, there were two unfathomable experts. The first person was a purple-robed old man. The second person was a beautiful woman in white. In addition, there were a few middle-aged cultivators who were also extremely powerful. The dozen or so junior cultivators were also not ordinary people. These people, they came from the Nine Saints Immortal Sect. The Nine Saints Immortal Sect was a famous force in the Bitter Cold State. It was one of the 9 major forces in the Bitter Cold State. It was said that the current king of the Bitter Cold State's Despair Divine Kingdom joined the Nine Saints Immortal Sect to cultivate when he was young. And the reason why this king was able to become the king of the Despair Divine Kingdom was because of the Nine Saints Immortal Sect. It was inseparable from the support of the Nine Saints Immortal Sect. Among the 9 major forces, the Nine Saints Immortal Sect was definitely one of the top forces. Where are we now? The old man in the lead asked. Reporting to my lord. This is the distance from Yang City. It's not too far. A middle-aged cultivator said. The old man nodded. This group of people galloped in the forest. When ordinary beasts saw this group of people, they would hide as far away as possible, not daring to get close at all. When night fell, these people stopped to rest in a forest near the cold river. Splash! Suddenly, a cultivator walked up from the cold river. There are demons in the cold river. These people all stood up. Their expressions couldn't help but become slightly serious. It was said that there were some terrifying demons living in the cold river. It was terrifying. It wasn't much weaker than the creatures in the endless ghost sand. This was just a rumor. No one had seen it before. Of course, perhaps someone had seen it before, but the cultivators who had seen the cold river demons had already been killed by the cold river demons. Naturally, the news about the great demon of Frigid River would not spread. It's not a great demon of Cold River, it's a human cultivator. The beautiful woman in white said. The others heaved a sigh of relief. A young cultivator said, the great demon of the frigid river is just a legend. It can't be taken seriously. At this time, a beautiful female cultivator spoke up. Why did this brat jump into the cold river? Could it be that he was cultivating in the frigid river? It is said that the frigid river's water temperature is several thousand degrees below zero. Even a powerful cultivator would be severely injured by the cold water. Why did this kid jump into the frigid river? Maybe he's cultivating an ice attribute divine ability. Another tall female cultivator said. Lin Feng glanced at the group of people in the distance. He ignored them and walked straight into the distance. Wait a moment, little friend, the old man suddenly said. Is something the matter? Lin Feng looked at the old man, faintly. The old man said, the creatures in the endless ghost sand have already walked out of the endless ghost sand. It's very dangerous at night. Little friend, why don't you stay with us? We can take care of each other. What do you think, little friend? Everyone was very shocked. They were very familiar with this elder. They were very familiar with him. This elder's name was Lu Tanshan, although he was not a snobbish person. However, not everyone could associate with a powerhouse of his level. Ordinary. Lu Tanshan only interacted with people of the same generation. But now, Lu Tanshan actually took the initiative to express goodwill to a young cultivator. This made the cultivators of the Nine Saints' immortal sect look at each other in dismay. They did not know why Elder Lu Tanshan would do this. The beautiful woman in white looked at Lin Feng and could not help but frown. Not interested, Lin Feng said indifferently. Then he walked into the distance without looking back. Seeing Lin Feng reject Elder Lu Tanshan's invitation with such an indifferent attitude, the group of cultivators of the Nine Saints' immortal sect were so shocked that their jaws almost dropped. That kid, he seemed to be only at the immortal emperor realm. That kind of cultivation, when compared to them, was far inferior, let alone compared to Elder Lu Tanshan. However, in the face of Elder Lu Tanshan's invitation, he actually rejected it with such an indifferent attitude. He did not give Elder Lu Tanshan any face. Wasn't this too arrogant? Kid, stop right there. Immediately, one of the young sky prides shouted. He looked coldly at Lin Feng. Lin Feng looked at the young genius indifferently and said, What's the matter? Seeing Lin Feng's indifferent expression, Lin Feng's expression clearly did not put him in his eyes. The young heaven's pride was instantly enraged. He was about to say something, but at this time Lu Tanshan reprimanded, Don't talk too much. Otherwise, you will be punished by the sect rules. Hearing this, the young heaven's pride was startled. He quickly shut his mouth, not daring to say another word. Lin Feng turned around. He left into the distance. When Lin Feng's figure could no longer be seen, Lu Tanshan retracted his gaze. Senior brother Lu, why are you so tolerant of that kid? The beautiful woman in white asked doubtfully. Lu Tanshan said, That kid gives me a very strange feeling. Very strange? What do you mean? The beautiful woman in white asked curiously. Lu Tanshan frowned. It's an indescribable feeling. Although that kid looks ordinary, when I look at him, I feel an extremely oppressive feeling. How is that possible? Senior brother Lu is a 5th heavenly layer Saint Emperor. How can you feel an oppressive aura from that kid? The beautiful woman said in disbelief. The rest of the people's expressions changed greatly. They could not believe it, because Lin Feng was too young. A 5th heavenly layer Saint Emperor, expert, felt an oppressive aura from an extremely young cultivator. Was that possible? Although Lin Feng was young, He was already an immortal emperor. However, in front of Lu Tanshan, who was a saint emperor, this realm was nothing. A female cultivator said, "Is it because we encountered a few creatures that came out of the endless ghost sand? In order to protect us, Marshal Uncle Lu was too tired after the continuous battles, so he had an illusion." Lu Tanshan said, "Perhaps." Then he said, "You are the future hope of the Nine Saints' immortal sect. You must cultivate well. I hope that one day, when you have the strength to fight against those terrifying creatures, I will be relieved." Hee, Marshal Uncle, don't worry. With our talent, we will reach that level sooner or later. When that time comes, if we encounter creatures from the endless ghost sand, we won't need Marshal Uncle to protect us anymore. At that time, we can clean up those blind things for Marshal Uncle. A young genius said confidently. The group laughed and chatted for a while. When the darkness completely fell, they withdrew their auras and stopped talking. Chapter 3742. Lin Feng didn't care about the cultivators from the Nine Saints' immortal sect at all. They were a bunch of strangers. Lin Feng couldn't be bothered to care about them. Lin Feng found a secluded place and set up a concealment restriction. Then he entered the restriction to expel the poison. The black snake's poison was extremely terrifying. Even the white jade toad couldn't completely detoxify it. Luckily, Lin Feng's body was strong enough. In addition, he had the undying bloodline. Otherwise, he would have died many times over. Lin Feng planned to use the heavenly fire to refine the poison in his body. Purple earthcore fire, black flame god incinerating fire, hellfire, golden dragon divine flame, and black flame god devouring fire. The 5 heavenly fires were activated. Instantly, the temperature in his body became scorching hot. Under Lin Feng's control, the 5 heavenly fires entered Lin Feng's body and wrapped around the poison in Lin Feng's body. Next, the 5 heavenly fires burned fiercely. As the heavenly fires burned, the poison in Lin Feng's body was gradually refined. After about 6 hours, the poison in Lin Feng's body was finally completely refined. Yang City wasn't a particularly large city. In the bitter cold state, it could only be considered a medium-sized city. The city lord of Yang City was very famous. Everyone knew who she was, because the city lord of Yang City was called Meng Bingling. This woman, she was one of the top 10 beauties of the bitter cold state. She came from the hell-suppressing, immortal sect of the bitter cold state. The Nine Saints' immortal sect was such a strong force, but they didn't dare to say that they were the strongest force in the bitter cold state. The reason was the existence of the hell-suppressing immortal sect. The hell-suppressing immortal sect was also a force with a long history and an extremely strong foundation. The disciples of the Nine Saints' immortal sect and the hell-suppressing immortal sect had been fighting for many years. However, no one could convince the other. However, every few years, the 9 forces would hold a martial arts competition between their disciples. The outstanding disciples of the 9 forces would gather together. Then, the first place would be decided. In the many battles, the disciples of the Nine Saints' immortal sect and the hell-suppressing immortal sect were the most number one. It was hard to tell who was stronger. Meng Bingling's father was the nephew of the Genu immortal sect's sect master. Therefore, Meng Bingling's background was extremely noble, such a noble background. In addition, he had top-notch talent and strength. She was the most beautiful woman in the world. One could imagine just how many people in bitter cold state were chasing after Meng Bingling. Although Yang City wasn't a big city, it was bustling with activity. Perhaps it was impossible to see so many top-notch geniuses in any city. Many top prodigies had gathered in Sun City because of Meng Bingling. Many people wanted to win her heart, but so far, no one had succeeded. The reason why everyone chased after Meng Bingling was not just because of her looks. Actually, there was another big reason. That was, strictly speaking, she was the first successor of the Genu Immortal sect. Why did he say that? There was a reason for that. Meng Bingling's father was poisoned many years ago. His body was in a bad condition, and he no longer had the energy to manage the Genu Immortal sect. The sect leader of the Genu Immortal sect was the uncle of Meng Bingling's father. When he was young, he was wholeheartedly focused on cultivation and had no interest in love. So he had no children. In the next generation, only Meng Bingling's father was his nephew, and Meng Bingling's father only had one daughter, Meng Bingling. So, in the future, the power of the Genu Immortal sect would definitely fall into Meng Bingling's hands. Whoever married Meng Bingling would have at least half of the power of the Genu Immortal sect in the future. Of course, if the husband and wife were in love. Maybe Meng Bingling would give the position of sect leader to her husband. This was also very likely to happen. Therefore, even though the other 9 of the top 10 beauties of the Bitterhan province all came from extraordinary backgrounds and were outstanding beauties, however, the attractiveness of cultivators, it was far from being comparable to Meng Bingling. Whoever married Meng Bingling would not only get the beauty, moreover, in the future, he would basically be the master of the Genu Immortal sect. After Lin Feng came to Yang City, he heard all kinds of things about Meng Bingling. It seemed the cultivators here, as long as they had time, the topic of discussion would always revolve around Meng Bingling. Lin Feng didn't have much interest in this Meng Bingling, because after all, he was just passing by. He didn't want to have anything to do with Meng Bingling. After arriving at Yang City, Lin Feng first found an inn to stay in, then washed up and changed into a clean set of clothes. After inquiring about the famous restaurants here, Lin Feng went straight to the restaurant. This could be considered one of Lin Feng's little hobbies. Everywhere he went, it was necessary to try the delicacies here. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that Lin Feng had tasted all the delicacies in the world. Heaven Immortal Tower. This was one of the most lively restaurants in Yang City. It was said that the boss of the Heaven Immortal Tower was a woman, and an extremely beautiful woman. Some people said that the beauty of the Heaven Immortal Tower's boss was not inferior to Meng Bingling, so many people liked to go to the Heaven Immortal Tower to eat. If they were lucky, they could even meet the boss of the Heaven Immortal Tower. And according to those cultivators who saw the appearance of the boss of the Antenna Tower, a woman like the boss of the Heaven Immortal Tower simply didn't look like a woman of the mortal world. She was like a fairy of the 9 heavens immortal world. It was unforgettable. When Lin Feng arrived at the Heaven Immortal Tower, he found that it was indeed very lively. He wanted to find a seat. It was an extremely difficult thing. Lin Feng waited for a while and just happened to see a table by the window leave. So he walked over. His luck was quite good. He actually waited for such a good seat. Lin Feng asked the waiter to clean up the table. Then he sat on the chair and began to order. Lin Feng ordered a table full of delicious dishes and a pot of good wine. After the dishes were served, then he drank while enjoying the food. It was really a great enjoyment. At this moment, there was a conflict at the next table. The cause was because the previous table left. For cultivators came here, and after the waiter cleaned up, the 4 of them sat down. Of the 4 cultivators, 2 were men and 2 were women. Of the 2 female cultivators, one of them was wearing a tight black leather jacket, completely revealing her hot figure. The other female cultivator had an incomparably cold expression, as if she didn't want anyone to come near her. Regardless of whether it was the hot female cultivator or the cold female cultivator, they were both extremely rare beauties. Therefore, they attracted the attention of many people. And just as they sat down, 7 to 8 cultivators surrounded them, wanting to take their seats. The 4 cultivators naturally weren't willing. The group of cultivators that surrounded them clamored to sit together. Next, 2 of the cultivators did not hesitate to sit beside the 2 peerlessly beautiful cultivators. Their hands moved towards the 2 female cultivators' willowy waists in an extremely disobedient manner. The 2 female cultivators each gave the 2 cultivators a slap. Chapter 37:43. Those with discerning eyes could naturally tell that those cultivators had ulterior motives. Those 2 female cultivators were simply too beautiful. Anyone who saw them would feel a rush of excitement. Lin Feng was used to seeing all kinds of peerless beauties. When those who had seen all kinds of beauties saw those 2 female cultivators, they couldn't help but take a few more glances. Not to mention the others. Women were a vulnerable group to begin with, especially in a world where the strong were respected. The weakness of women was even more vivid. Of course, we can't deny that some female cultivators were very powerful. Their status was very respected. However, the number of female cultivators was simply too small. What about the other female cultivators? Even those female cultivators who came from large factions, they seemed to have noble statuses. However, many people's fates were in the hands of their families. They couldn't have someone they liked. They couldn't casually reveal their feelings, because they were the marriage tools of their families. This world, it had always been so cruel. So, sometimes a woman had a beautiful face. Especially in the world of cultivators, it wasn't necessarily a good thing. The evil hands of too many cultivators, they would reach out to these beautiful female cultivators. If they didn't have the strength to resist their final fate, it would definitely be extremely tragic. Damn it, we let these bastards beat us to it. Someone cursed in a low voice. It seemed that they also had such thoughts. But now that someone had done what they wanted to do first, they felt depressed, but they could only watch from the side. *TCH. You even dare to hit me. Do you know who I am? Capture these 2 women for me. One of the cultivators couldn't help but say, fiercely. At this moment, someone said, "Isn't that guy Zhang Yuchen from the Martial God Pavilion?" Zhang Yuchen, the grandson of the 7th elder of the Martial God Pavilion? Someone said in surprise. That's right. That's him. The cultivator nodded. I heard that this Zhang Yuchen is a famous scoundrel. He has harmed many women. Someone said, rumor has it that this fella cultivated a nourishment harvesting technique. The women he harmed basically all died because they were harvested. Another cultivator said, understanding a bit more inside information. As one of the 9 great powers, the Martial God Pavilion actually allows its disciples to practice such an evil cultivation technique. Someone said indignantly, there are so many demons in the 9 great powers. What kind of people do they lack? Many people shook their heads. They felt that the cultivator's imagination of the 9 great forces was too perfect. In this world, the strong preyed on the weak. How could there be any righteous forces? Therefore, after recognizing Zhang Yuchen's identity, many people knew that the 2 women were going to be in trouble. Junior sisters, you 2 go first. We'll stop them. The 2 male cultivators said in a deep voice. However, both of their cultivations were at the quasi-emperor realm. They couldn't stop the cultivators from the Martial God Pavilion for long. In fact, the 2 female cultivators' cultivations weren't particularly high. They were also at the quasi-emperor realm. The cultivator called Zhang Yuchen and the other cultivator were closer to the 2 female cultivators. The 2 of them didn't want to do it themselves. Instead, they let a group of subordinates capture the 2 female cultivators. But now, Their subordinates were temporarily stopped by the two female cultivators' senior brothers. So they decided to do it themselves. These two people, they each locked onto a female cultivator. Then they directly grabbed them. Although these two people weren't good people, their cultivations weren't weak. They were both at the immortal emperor realm. Therefore, when they reached out to grab the two female cultivators who were only at the quasi-emperor realm felt the aura emitted from Zhang Yuchen and the other cultivator. Their faces were very pale. Their bodies even staggered back. Under that kind of powerful pressure, the two of them couldn't even circulate their magic power to fight. Zhang Yuchen and the other cultivator looked like a cat playing with a mouse. They approached the two women step by step. The two female cultivators were about to be caught. At this moment, the two female cultivators who were constantly retreating bumped into Lin Feng. Lin Feng didn't turn around. Instead, he said indifferently, "Isn't this Heaven Immortal Tower a place to eat? Such a big restaurant. And such a thing like maliciously snatching a table that was reserved by others. Why didn't the Heaven Immortal Tower do anything about it? Could it be that they are in cahoots? I didn't expect that the Heaven Immortal Tower was still fishing for fame." At this moment, a woman's voice came from the 5th floor of the Heaven Immortal Tower. This young master's words are a little too serious. My Heaven Immortal Tower naturally won't sit by and do nothing about what happened in the Heaven Immortal Tower. Look, it's the owner of the Heaven Immortal Tower. It's said that she's called Fairy Shui. Someone exclaimed and recognized the woman in the corridor on the 5th floor. That woman had a graceful figure, and her skin was as smooth as jade. One look, and one could tell that she was an absolute beauty. It was just that that woman was wearing a veil. One couldn't see the woman's appearance clearly, but one could imagine that under the veil, it was definitely a peerless immortal face. After seeing Fairy Shui appear, Zhang Yuchen and the others also stopped. The Heaven Immortal Tower was extraordinary. Zhang Yuchen and the others still had to take care of themselves. Let's forget about today's matter. My Heaven Immortal Tower is a place to eat. If you want to cause trouble, you can only be chased out by the guards of the Heaven Immortal Tower. Fairy Shui said. More than a dozen guards squeezed through the crowd and walked in. All of them looked fierce. Obviously, Fairy Shui knew that Zhang Yuchen and the others had extraordinary backgrounds. So, she didn't make things difficult for them. If it was someone else, they might have been chased out. Fairy Shui handled this matter very unfairly. However, this world, it was just like that. This world was originally an unfair world. Just now, it was just a misunderstanding. Zhang Yuchen said, and Fairy Shui nodded and left. After Fairy Shui left, Zhang Yuchen sneered and looked at Lin Feng, saying, "Brat, people who meddle in other people's business don't have a good ending. You know that?" Lin Feng didn't care about Zhang Yuchen at all, because he wasn't worthy. "Thank you for your help, young master." The two female cultivators first thanked Lin Feng, then said worriedly, "It's just that this time, we've implicated young master." Lin Feng said indifferently, "I'm not helping you. It's just that your conflict has disturbed my enjoyment of the food." The two female cultivators couldn't help but smile bitterly. Lin Feng was so direct that they didn't know what to say next. When Zhang Yuchen saw that Lin Feng didn't care about him, his face instantly darkened. However, he had just been warned by Fairy Shui, so now was not the time to make a move. He could only temporarily suppress the anger in his heart. However, Zhang Yuchen didn't want to let Lin Feng go. He planned to wait for Lin Feng to leave the restaurant before dealing with Lin Feng. At this moment, someone outside exclaimed, "9 Saints Immortal Sex Lu Tanshan and Fang Qingwei are here." A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Lu Tanshan, he was a fifth heavenly layer sage emperor expert, and Fang Qingyue was a first heavenly layer sage emperor expert. A sage emperor cultivator was considered a top expert in all the worlds in the universe. Everyone's gaze turned towards the hall on the first floor. Lin Feng also couldn't help but take a look. It's actually them, he revealed a surprised expression. Because he had actually seen Lu Tanshan, Fang Qingyue, and the others before. It was none other than the group of people he saw beside the cold river. Chapter 3744. The arrival of experts like Lu Tanshan and Fang Qingyue was naturally a big deal. They were not only strong. More importantly, behind them was the Nine Saints' immortal sect, who knew how many forces in the bitter cold state were under the Nine Saints' immortal sect. Moreover, countless people wanted to curry favor with the Nine Saints' immortal sect. They wanted to establish a relationship with the Nine Saints' immortal sect. Many people greeted Lu Tanshan and Fang Qingyue. However, Lu Tanshan and Fang Qingyue only nodded. They did not say a word to the cultivators who greeted them. Lu Tanshan and Fang Qingyue were so arrogant. However, everyone felt that this was a matter of course. When the cultivators in the private rooms heard that Lu Tanshan and Fang Qingyue had arrived, they all came out of the private rooms. They hurried to the main hall on the first floor to greet Lu Tanshan and Fang Qingyue. Even Fairy Shui heard that Lu Tanshan and Fang Qingyue had arrived and quickly came to the first floor to greet the people from the Nine Saints' immortal sect. Zhang Yuchen and the others from the Martial God Pavilion also went downstairs to greet Lu Tanshan and Fang Qingyue. Lu Tanshan and Fang Qingyue knew Zhang Yuchen, but a junior like Zhang Yuchen was not in their eyes. However, they still gave some face to the Martial God Pavilion. Therefore, Lu Tanshan and Fang Qingyue nodded to Zhang Yuchen and the others who came to greet them. The people from the Martial God Pavilion were so excited that their bodies were trembling. That was a Saint Emperor level expert. The ones who stood at the peak of the heavenly sage great world were these sage emperors. The Saint Emperors were actually nodding at them in greeting. This was too honorable. Many people looked at Zhang Yuchen and the others with envy, because when they greeted Lu Tanshan and Fang Qingyue, they did not even raise their heads. But the people from the Martial God Pavilion had at least attracted some attention from Lu Tanshan and Fang Qingyue. At this time, Lu Tanshan and Fang Qingyue walked up the stairs, surrounded by the experts from the various major powers and Fairy Shui. No wonder they all want to become peak experts. Look at Fairy Shui-Yi's attitude towards the four cultivators who were bullied. Then look at her attitude towards Lu Tanshan and Fang Qingyue. It's like the difference between heaven and earth. This world is so realistic. Many people began to discuss how he wished he could become a peerless expert like Lu Tanshan and Fang Qingyue. If he could become an existence at this level, no matter where he went, they would definitely be respected and looked up to by countless people. Just like now, countless cultivators in the Celestial Immortal Tower were looking at Lu Tanshan and Fang Qingyue. At this moment, the group arrived at the second floor and was about to head to the third floor. It was an unintentional glance. Lu Tanshan was slightly stunned. Then, he revealed a shocked expression. "Lord Lu, what's wrong?" Fairy Shui asked. Lu Tanshan ignored Fairy Shui and walked towards a young cultivator by the window. Beside the young cultivator stood two beautiful female cultivators and their senior martial brothers. When the four of them saw Lu Tanshan walking over, they actually started to panic. He didn't know what Lu Tanshan was doing here. Could it be that Lu Tanshan has taken a fancy to those two beautiful cultivators? I've never heard of Lu Tanshan getting close to women. Many people couldn't help but wonder. The person sitting alone was naturally Lin Feng. Lu Tanshan hadn't forgotten about Lin Feng these days. The oppressive feeling that Lin Feng gave him had always lingered in his heart. He originally thought that it was a hallucination caused by fatigue. But soon, this idea was rejected by Lu Tanshan. Lu Tanshan had a secret that he had never told anyone. This secret was Lu Tanshan had already mastered the ability of sudden inspiration. This ability, it was a very powerful ability. It could sense danger. Lu Tanshan thought about it carefully and realized why he felt that kind of oppressive feeling from Lin Feng. In fact, it was the ability of sudden inspiration that had played a role. "Little friend, we meet again." Lu Tanshan came to Lin Feng's side, clasped his fists, and said with a face full of smiles. At this moment, the heaven immortal tower that was originally venting, instantly it was silent. Lu Tanshan, a super expert of the 5th layer of the Holy Emperor realm, actually took the initiative to greet a young cultivator. What was going on? Many people's eyes almost popped out. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Many people even felt that this was a dream, but this was what was happening in front of them. Who exactly is he? The two beautiful women beside Lin Feng looked at Lin Feng in shock. They didn't see Lin Feng turn around. They didn't even know what the man who helped them looked like. Fairy Shuiyi's expression couldn't help but change slightly when she saw that Lu Tanshan actually took the initiative to greet Lin Feng. She knew that she had been too hasty in dealing with Zhang Yuchen's matter. That young master must have an extraordinary background. What was Zhang Yuchen and the others in front of him? Not worth mentioning, but just now, she seemed to have lost an opportunity to befriend him. Thinking of this, Fairy Shui couldn't help but feel extremely regretful. She began to think about how to salvage the situation. As for Zhang Yuchen and the others in the crowd, seeing this scene, they were so scared that they fell to the ground. "It's him. I didn't expect to see him here. I wonder who he is." When she saw Lin Feng, Fang Qinghua couldn't help but guess Lin Feng's identity. "It's you?" Lin Feng turned around and glanced at Lu Tanshan indifferently. He didn't get up. He didn't have any intention of greeting Lu Tanshan. He spoke so casually. This made everyone feel like they were about to go crazy. He was so young, but facing a cultivator of the 5th layer of the Holy Emperor realm, he was actually so casual. There was no respect at all. Wasn't this courting death? But to everyone's disbelief, Lu Tanshan replied with a beaming face, "That's right, it's me. I didn't expect you to remember me." Lu Tanshan called himself me in front of that young man? A cultivator of the 5th layer of the Holy Emperor realm called himself me? Many people were completely dumbfounded. Lu Tanshan, wasn't he too humble? "I remember." Lin Feng took a sip of wine. Then he ignored Lu Tanshan and looked into the distance. No one knew what he was thinking. "Can I sit down and have a few drinks with you?" Lu Tanshan asked. Lin Feng nodded and said, "Have a seat." "Thank you." Lu Tanshan was overjoyed. He pulled out a stool. Then, carefully, he used half of his butt to sit on the stool. His body was also slightly tilted towards Lin Feng. Chapter 3745. This was an extremely strange scene. The entire Heaven Immortal Tower was silent. A young cultivator was sitting by the window, drinking wine. His eyes were looking out the window. No one knew if he was looking into the distance or at the endless stream of people on the street. A 5th heavenly layer Saint Emperor expert. Half of his butt was sitting on a stool, and then he would occasionally pick up a bottle of wine to pour wine for the young cultivator. "What's your name?" After a long time, Lin Feng asked, "I am Lu Tanshan, an elder of the 9 saints immortal sect? Lu Tanshan's spirit rose as he immediately replied. So, it's someone from the Nine Saints' immortal sect. Good. I'll remember you. Lin Feng stood up and casually threw a few origin crystals on the table. Then he walked out. Lu Tanshan hurriedly stood up and sent Lin Feng out. Heavens, who is that young master? He's so young, but he's able to make Lu Tanshan so respectful. It's too unbelievable. Could he be the successor of some superpower? But Lu Tanshan is a fifth heavenly layer Saint Emperor expert. There's no successor of any power in the heavenly sage great world that can make an expert like Lu Tanshan so respectful. Could he be the successor of some foreign power? For example, the Undying World or the three paramount realms. The Undying World and the three paramount realms no longer have such strong control over the other great worlds. So even if it's the successor of the Undying World or the three paramount realms, there's no need for Lu Tanshan to be so respectful. Then why do you think this is? Unless that young cultivator's strength exceeds Lu Tanshan's, then Lu Tanshan would be so careful. That's impossible. That person is too young, and his cultivation seems to be only at the immortal emperor realm. Compared to Lu Tanshan, he's thousands of miles away. But other than this reason, is there any other reason? After Lin Feng left, the entire Heaven Immortal Tower was in an uproar. Everyone was discussing Lin Feng. Everyone wanted to know who Lin Feng was, but in the end, they didn't have any clues. After seeing Lu Tanshan and the others send Lin Feng off, only then did the discussion die down. Lord Lu, that young master just now, who was it? May I know if Lord Lu can tell me? Fairy Shui asked. Being able to get to know Lin Feng, Lu Tanshan's mood was quite good. For someone as young as Lin Feng to be so powerful, he would definitely become an expert who would roam the three realms in the future. Now, he would form good karma. There were endless benefits in the future. Therefore, Lu Tanshan was in a good mood. He said, Fairy Shui, it's best if you don't try to pry. Some people's identities are too extraordinary. Knowing them won't do you any good. Fairy Shui suppressed the shock in her heart. She nodded and said, Thank you for your guidance, Lord Lu. Shui understands. Lin Feng returned to his residence. However, he realized that the two beautiful female cultivators and their two senior brothers had been following him. Those people from the Martial God Pavilion probably won't find trouble with you anymore. You can leave on your own. Lin Feng waved his hand and said, if it was before, Lin Feng wouldn't mind interacting with these two beautiful cultivators. But now, Lin Feng wasn't in the mood. The current Lin Feng was wholeheartedly focused on cultivation. Of course, women were indispensable. However, it didn't mean that he had to get to know a beauty when he saw one. He didn't have that much free time. The female cultivator with the hot figure said, Young master, we want to ask you to do us a favor, okay? Lin Feng was speechless. These people were still pushing their luck. They were asking for his help again. Why? Not interested, Lin Feng said indifferently. If young master is willing to help us, we can agree to any condition. The female cultivator with the hot figure bit her red lips and said, since he had spoken to this extent, it was clear that he was hinting at something. Lin Feng was rather surprised. They were paying such a big price. What was it that they wanted? Follow me in. Lin Feng opened the door of the rented courtyard and said, he took the lead and walked in. The two female cultivators and their two senior brothers were overjoyed. They followed Lin Feng into the courtyard. Everyone came to the hall, and Lin Feng gestured for everyone to sit down. The four of them didn't dare to sit in front of Lin Feng. They stood in the hall. Lin Feng didn't continue to ask them to sit down. Instead, he asked, "What's the matter? Tell me." The female cultivator with the hot figure said, "We are from Numinous Treasure Mountain of the Bitter Han State. Numinous Treasure Mountain. A few years ago, a supreme treasure appeared in Numinous Treasure Mountain and was obtained by my master. However, this matter was leaked out, and the evil spirit sect, one of the 9 major forces, sent people to capture my master. We escaped and have been searching for experts, hoping to save my master. However, we have hit a wall time and time again. I hope that young master can help us." Lin Feng said indifferently, "Since your master has been captured, she must have been killed long ago. All of you should also disperse and find another sect to join." The female cultivator with the hot figure said, "When we escaped, we brought out Master's primordial spirit lamp. Master's primordial spirit lamp is still burning, and Master is still alive." Lin Feng said in surprise, "Logically speaking, after obtaining the treasure, your master should have been killed. Since your master is still alive, it seems that the people from the spirit evil sect did not obtain the treasure. Could it be that the treasure is with you?" The female cultivator with the hot figure hurriedly said, "The treasure is not with us, but we are guessing that Master might have hidden it somewhere. What exactly is that treasure? Do you know?" Lin Feng asked. The female cultivator with the hot figure said, "It is said that it has something to do with condensing qi." It has something to do with condensing qi? Lin Feng was extremely shocked. There were very few cultivators who could control qi, and the use of qi was self-evident. Lin Feng's supreme qi, as well as the magnetic field formed by overlapping qi, had always been one of Lin Feng's trump cards. Moreover, after mastering qi, no matter how strong a cultivator's aura was, Lin Feng would be pressured. Lin Feng could ignore it, and the reason why the 4 masters had obtained that treasure was related to condensing qi. Could it be that that treasure could help cultivators condense qi? If that was the case, this favor, Lin Feng planned to help, because he was also coveting that treasure. If he could obtain that treasure, he would be able to condense a 4th type of qi. Then, how terrifying would the magnetic field formed by the superimposition of 4 types of qi be? If Lin Feng were to use the 1 qi into 3 pure ones, and then use the superimposition of qi, he could at most condense 12 layers of qi magnetic fields. At that time, relying on this method, in addition to the many treasures on his body. Chapter 3746. After chatting for a while, Lin Feng found out the names of these 4 people. The hot female cultivator was called Zhong Haimei. The cold female cultivator was called Nangong Lingbing. The rather dull and honest male cultivator was called Li Qixuan. The other thin and weak male cultivator was called Zhang Yinshan. Back then, the sect had suffered a calamity, and only 4 people managed to escape. Back then, they were all orphans and were adopted by the fairy Fanjin. Thus, they were able to survive. So, after escaping, they went around begging for help to save the fairy Fanjin. If it was anyone else, they might have already found a new force to join. Therefore, the character of these 4 people was quite good. At the very least, they knew how to repay kindness. Lin Feng asked the 4 of them to come to him tomorrow, because Lin Feng planned to head to the spirit evil sect tomorrow. This spirit evil sect was an evil sect among the 9 great powers. Their way of doing things, vicious and merciless. However, they were powerful, and ordinary forces did not dare to provoke a colossus like the spirit evil sect. But Lin Feng did not care. He was alone, and after obtaining benefits, he would leave. The other party would not be able to find him. What's more? So, what if the other party found him? With Lin Feng's current battle strength, Other than those terrifying creatures that walked out of the endless ghost sand, there were not many people who could threaten him. The spirit evil sect was indeed a powerful force. Lin Feng was also a little afraid of the spirit evil sect. The reason why he was afraid of the spirit evil sect was not because he was afraid of the current cultivators of the spirit evil sect. Instead, he was afraid of the spirit evil sect's foundation. However, these foundations would not be easily used. Thus, to be honest, Lin Feng did not take the spirit evil sect to heart. Night. Someone came to visit Lin Feng. Lin Feng discovered that it was a woman in white. Her clothes were as white as snow, fluttering like an immortal. She was born with a delicate and beautiful face, which was like a masterpiece of the heavens. Anyone who saw this couldn't help but be amazed. Even when compared to Zhong Haimei and Naylan Lingbing, this face was not inferior at all. If it was coupled with her temperament, the woman in front of him was even better. It was Lin Feng's first time seeing such a beautiful face. However, he knew who this woman was. Fairy Shui, the owner of the Heaven Immortal Tower. Previously, when he met Fairy Shui at the Heaven Immortal Tower, the woman was wearing a veil. Therefore, Lin Feng didn't see Fairy Shui's face. However, Lin Feng clearly remembered Fairy Shui's temperament. Therefore, he was able to recognize that the beautiful woman before him was Fairy Shui. Shui greets young master. Fairy Shui bowed slightly, her voice soft. Lin Feng didn't have any special feelings for Fairy Shui. Of course, he wouldn't have any bad feelings for her because of her unfair way of doing things. Most people knew how to choose between the members of the Martial God Pavilion and the 4 ordinary cultivators. Of course, even though Fairy Shui was biased towards Zhang Yuchen and the others from the Martial God Pavilion, she still managed to stop the conflict. There was no such thing as absolute fairness in this world. Lin Feng was very clear about the rules of survival in this world. Therefore, he wouldn't criticize others for how they handled things. If you wanted to win the respect of others, you needed to have your own strength. The most important thing was this matter had nothing to do with Lin Feng. Fairy Shui, it had nothing to do with Lin Feng. Lin Feng raised his eyebrows. I didn't expect Fairy Shui to visit so late at night. May I know why Fairy Shui has come here? The night is long. I can't sleep. I want to drink and chat with young master. May I have the honor? Fairy Shui asked. This woman, she wasn't someone who liked to hide things. This point, Lin Feng rather admired her. Fairy Shui had come for him. She was straightforward about her intentions. However, most people would find all sorts of reasons to explain themselves. Lin Feng didn't reject Fairy Shui because he couldn't sleep either. Chatting and drinking with a beauty was always a good thing. Lin Feng invited Fairy Shui into the courtyard. There were stone tables and stone stools in the courtyard. The two sat down. Fairy Shui didn't mention what had happened during the day. She was clearly a very intelligent woman. She had made ample preparations. Fine wine and delicacies were all prepared and placed in her storage ring. She took them out and placed them on the table. Fairy Shui proposed a toast to Lin Feng. Lin Feng raised his cup and downed it. Fairy Shui poured herself a cup of fine wine and downed it in one gulp. Fairy Shui is truly a heroine. Lin Feng said. Fairy Shui sighed faintly and said, managing the restaurant alone, facing all sorts of social interactions. Even if I don't know how to drink, I still have to drink. Over time, my tolerance for alcohol developed just like that. However, I'm still a woman after all. I can't drink too much. I can only drink a little. My mission today is to accompany young master until he's drunk. Drinking is fine, but don't get drunk, Lin Feng said. Fairy Shui knew how to liven up the atmosphere. Although there were only the two of them, the atmosphere was good. Fairy Shui didn't ask about Lin Feng's background. She drank a lot of wine and seemed to be drunk in the end. Her body fell into Lin Feng's embrace. However, Lin Feng supported Fairy Shui. Honey trap. It was useless to him, regardless of the reason. He let Fairy Shui use her honey trap. Lin Feng wouldn't beat her at her own game. I'm like a speck of dust in the mortal world. After a long time, I feel physically and mentally exhausted. I also want to find a good man. If young master doesn't mind, I'm willing to stay by your side and serve you well. Fairy Shui exhaled and said, Fairy, you're drunk. Sit down and rest for a while. You'll feel much better. Lin Feng said. He helped Fairy Shui sit down. 15 minutes later, Fairy Shui sobered up a lot. She said, Did I say something I shouldn't have when I was drunk? Said Lin Feng. That's not true. It's late at night. Fairy, it's time to go back. Fairy Shui said faintly, Then I'll go back first. I'll come back to drink with young master another day. All right, said Lin Feng, nodding. Then he saw Shui out. Won't you regret it? The demon lord teased. Lin Feng smiled bitterly and shook his head. What kind of person did the demon lord think he was? He wasn't a casual person. Of course, it was just that sometimes when he was casual, he might not be a person. After the third watch, 100 miles away from Sun City, there was only a trace of light. It was swallowed by darkness, endless darkness. It covered heaven and earth at the same time. In the darkness, blood clouds surged. The darkness eroded, and the blood clouds arrived. However, late at night, everyone was resting, so no one noticed. And in the endless darkness, there were also bursts of eerie laughter. Chapter 3747. The temple in Yang City was an earth temple. The history of this earth temple was extremely long. Don't underestimate the earth temple. Many people thought that the earth god worshipped by the earth temple was just a low-level god in the era of titled gods. But this understanding was wrong. First of all, the gods in the era of titled gods all had extraordinary origins. Which of the gods who could be titled didn't have great divine abilities? Second of all, the earth god was the god who controlled the land. The land referred to the land. Therefore, the earth god was also known as the earth god. The earth and the heavens were opposite. Think about how terrifying the heavenly Tao was. One could see how extraordinary the earth god was. Of course, there were many reasons why the earth god was looked down upon. The biggest reason was that some of the later generations' scriptures distorted and vilified the earth god. Therefore, many people had a relatively wrong understanding of the earth god. The incense in the earth temple in Yang City was still flourishing. The earth temple emitted the power of divinity. That powerful force enveloped the entire Yang City within. When the dark erosion and blood clouds arrived, the statue in the earth temple actually sensed it. The statue of the earth god appeared. It was a tall earth god. This earth god was completely different from the short and timid earth god in the legends. The earth god in front of him was the real earth god, a great existence in the era of titled gods. Retreat. The earth god looked at the blood clouds and the dark erosion. A cold voice came from the blood clouds. The Lord who has been sleeping for countless years has awakened. Curse him. Destroy the temple. As soon as he finished speaking, a ray of curse light swept out from the blood cloud. The curse light swept directly onto the earth god's body. The earth god's body. It immediately trembled violently as if it was uncontrollably. Why did he wake up? The earth god said in horror. However, The Earth God didn't get the answer he wanted to know. His body collapsed in the next moment, and the statue in the Earth Temple, after the Earth God's body crumbled, numerous cracks appeared on its body. The statue cracked. With a bang, it shattered into pieces. The idol was the core of the temple. Now, the statue was broken. Earth Temple. It would be difficult to protect Yang City anymore. What happened? Many people were alarmed and rushed out one after another to look outside. Everyone saw the blood cloud in the sky. He saw the dark erosion flying over from afar. In the end, darkness erosion surrounded Yang City. The blood-red cloud enveloped Sun City. Find that thing? Yi Fuqian muttered. A bone-chilling voice came from the depths of the darkness. Terrifying existences walked out one after another. These existences were all existences that came out from the boundless ghost sand. They had been hiding in the darkness for a long time. Now, they walked out from the darkness. They entered Yang City. The terrifying creatures of the endless ghost sand are here. Break through quickly. Countless people cried out in horror. The creatures in the endless ghost sand represented death and disaster. But no one expected that. The creatures in the endless ghost sand had broken through Yang City's defenses. This made everyone extremely puzzled. It wasn't as if the creatures from the endless ghost sand hadn't come to Yang City before. However, waves of creatures from the endless ghost sand had tried to break through Yang City's defenses, but failed in the end. This time, how did they succeed? Roar, roar. A low roar resounded through the clouds. The terrifying creatures started a massacre in Yang City. The creatures in the endless ghost sand were too terrifying. They weren't something that ordinary cultivators could fight against. As a result, the current Yang City was simply like Azura hell. A large number of cultivators were massacred. Corpses were everywhere. Some cultivators who rushed out of Yang City were instantly swallowed by the dark erosion. Their bodies turned into white bones in the blink of an eye. His flesh and blood had been eaten by some terrifying creature. After seeing this scene, many people chose to break through from the sky. Huff, 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 a powerful devouring force surged out from the blood-red cloud. A large number of cultivators were swallowed by the blood-red cloud. The dark erosion surrounded Yang City, while the blood-red cloud sealed the void. The division of labor was extremely clear. The dark erosion and the blood-red cloud wanted to trap and kill everyone. The scene in front of them was simply despairing. Where is the thing? Where is the thing? One after another, the terrifying creatures roared loudly as they slaughtered their way through. What are they looking for? Lin Feng was extremely shocked. These creatures in the endless ghost sand came with such a large force. They were actually here to look for something. Could it be? Who was it? Could it be that these creatures in the endless ghost sand were coveting something? Lin Feng was extremely puzzled, but he didn't have time to think about this now. He knew how terrifying the blood-red cloud and the dark erosion were. He had to leave quickly. Otherwise, the situation would be even more dangerous. Boom! A terrifying creature appeared. It was a thunderbird surrounded by thunderbolts. It contained 100,000 godly thunders as it moved towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng saw this thunderbird show its power before. He had killed many experts. Now, he was targeted by this thunderbird. Facing the thunderbird's attack, Lin Feng directly punched out with the supreme reincarnation fist. Bang! Lightning exploded. Lin Feng came in front of the thunderbird and grabbed its neck. Then he exerted force with both hands. Puchi! The thunderbird's neck was forcefully torn off by Lin Feng. Lin Feng kept the thunderbird's corpse because there must be a crystal in this creature's corpse. he quickly flew outside. From afar, Lin Feng saw a group of people from the Nine Saints' immortal sect being attacked by a creature in the endless ghost sand. It was a scorpion race creature with 9 tails. It was an extremely rare 9-tailed devil scorpion. The 9-tailed devil scorpion forced the group of people from the Nine Saints' immortal sect into a miserable state. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. The scorpion tails directly pierced through the chests of the cultivators from the Nine Saints' immortal sect. Those cultivators, they died on the spot. The 2 experts from the Nine Saints' immortal sect, Lu Tanshan and Fang Qingyue, were also injured. These people couldn't hold on for long. They were definitely going to die. Lin Feng frowned slightly. Lu Tanshan had poured wine for him before. His posture was very humble. Lin Feng felt that Lu Tanshan was a good person. So Lin Feng planned to help these people. He took out the black dragon sword and flew over with it. The 9-tailed devil scorpion's senses were very strong. The 9 scorpion tails stabbed towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng's speed was too fast. He dodged the 9 scorpion tails and arrived in front of the 9-tailed devil scorpion's head. The black dragon sword directly pierced through the 9-tailed devil scorpion's head. Chapter 3748. Thank you, young master, for saving us. Seeing that it was Lin Feng who saved everyone, Lu Tan and the others hurriedly thanked him. And Lu Tan himself thought to himself, my perception is indeed not wrong. Although this young master is young, his cultivation is powerful. As for Fang Qingyue and the others, they were extremely shocked and moved. Lin Feng stabbed a creature in the endless ghost sand to death with a single sword. This battle strength was a bit too terrifying. Follow me. Lin Feng kept the 9-tailed demon scorpion into the mountain and river ring, and then said in a deep voice, he flew towards the outside. Compared to the blood cloud, Lin Feng preferred to face the dark erosion, although the dark erosion was also incomparably terrifying. However, Lin Feng had a way to restrain the dark erosion. But Lin Feng did not have a way to restrain the blood cloud. Fortunately, that huge and terrifying creature did not come this time. If that guy came, it would be too terrifying. To anyone, it would be a huge disaster. A disaster that was enough to make people despair. But now, there was still hope of escaping. Everyone followed Lin Feng and quickly rushed outside. Not long after, Lin Feng heard 2 screams. He saw Zhong Haimei, Nangong Lingbing, Li Qixuan, and Zhang Yinshan. In order to protect Zhong Haimei and Nangong Lingbing, Li Qixuan, and Zhang Yinshan were pierced through by the sharp claws of a terrifying creature. They let out mournful screams. Senior brother, the 2 girls' faces were as pale as paper. Seeing their 2 senior brothers die tragically because of them, their hearts were filled with grief. The terrifying creature that killed Li Qixuan and Zhang Yinshan was a ghost-faced bear. Ghost-faced bear was about the same size as a black bear, but its face was not the face of a bear clan. It was the face of a devil. It was incomparably ugly. With just a glance, it made people feel as if they had fallen into a boundless purgatory. After the ghost-faced bear swallowed Li Qixuan and Zhang Yinshan, it quickly charged towards Zhong Haimei and Nangong Lingbing. The 2 girls were quickly caught up. Ghost-faced bear's huge claws slapped towards the 2 girls. The aura of death enveloped their bodies, and the 2 girls were so scared that their faces turned pale. Their faces were filled with despair. Slash! At this critical moment, Lin Feng arrived and slashed at the ghost-faced bear with the black dragon sword in his hand. Roar! The ghost-faced bear roared at Lin Feng and swung its huge claws at Lin Feng. With a loud bang, Lin Feng and the ghost-faced bear collided. He was actually sent flying by the ghost-faced bear. The ghost-faced bear was simply too powerful. However, Lin Feng did not cower. He charged at the ghost-faced bear again. The ghost-faced bear's roar shook the heavens. Its huge claws once again slapped towards Lin Feng. One chi into 3 pure ones. At this moment, Lin Feng split into 3. As for the other 2 Lin Feng, one of them took out 3 stone swords, while the other took out the Hell King's bell. The Hell King bell vibrated and emitted a terrifying sound wave attack. This kind of sound wave attack could affect the spiritual consciousness of the target. The ghost-faced bear was also affected. It shook its huge head, trying to make itself clearer. The ghost-faced bear had already sensed the existence of the other 2 Lin Feng. A defensive light shield, condensed from ghost chi, appeared around his body to protect him. The ghost-faced bear was truly powerful. It had many shocking methods. The ghost-faced bear ignored the 2 clones of Lin Feng. It continued to attack Lin Feng ferociously, in the ghost-faced bear's eyes, as long as it killed Lin Feng. Then, Lin Feng's 2 clones would automatically dissipate. They would no longer be a threat to it. Clang! Lin Feng held the black dragon sword and clashed with the ghost-faced bear's claws again. The black dragon sword was blocked by the ghost-faced bear's left claw. The ghost-faced bear's reaction was extremely fast. It grabbed the black dragon sword and slapped at Lin Feng with its other claw. However, at this moment, the ghost-faced bear felt pain in its chest. It lowered its head and saw 3 stone swords piercing through its chest. The ghost-faced bear thought that it could block the attack of Lin Feng's clones with its defensive light shield. But until now, the ghost-faced bear realized how wrong it was. Lin Feng's clones might not be able to unleash 100% of Lin Feng's battle strength, but they could unleash 90% of Lin Feng's battle strength. The 1 chi into 3 pure ones was powerful in this aspect. There were many magical powers that could create clones, but those clones created by magical powers could unleash 10% or 20% of the original body's strength. Unlike the 1 chi into 3 pure ones, which could unleash 90% of the battle strength at least. If Lin Feng's condition was outstanding, he could even unleash close to the original body's battle strength. In addition to underestimating the battle strength of Lin Feng's clones, the ghost-faced bear also underestimated the power of the 3 stone swords. This was one of the most terrifying combined magic treasures since ancient times. Although after the 36 stone swords were separated, the power of these stone swords was greatly reduced, but that was relative to when the 36 stone swords were together. But in reality, the power of these stone swords was still incomparably terrifying. The attack power of Lin Feng's clones using the 3 stone swords was extremely shocking. Therefore, the 3 stone swords pierced through the ghost-faced bear's defensive light shield without much difficulty. Then, the 3 stone swords pierced into the ghost-faced bear's body. Lin Feng also kept the ghost-faced bear into the mountain river ring. He kept the 3 stone swords and the Hell King bell. The 2 clones dissipated. Then, he quickly rushed outside. The rest of the people followed closely behind Lin Feng and rushed outside. There were also some cultivators that Lin Feng did not know. When they saw how powerful Lin Feng was, they also followed behind Lin Feng and rushed outside. Hundreds of people gathered around Lin Feng in a short period of time. Even Fairy Shui led a portion of her subordinates to meet up with Lin Feng, but there were so many of them. The target was very big. They were attacked by more than a dozen terrifying creatures. By the time they broke out of the encirclement and arrived outside the city, more than half of them were dead or injured. There were still more than 200 people left. The darkness outside is very terrifying, devouring all life. A cultivator said with a trembling voice. "It's fine," Lin Feng said in a deep voice. The reason why he brought so many people was because he might be able to use them when breaking out of the encirclement, because no one knew what was going on in the darkness. The more people there were, the higher the chances of breaking out. Follow me into the darkness. Let's charge out. Lin Feng shouted in a deep voice. Then he took out the powerful Kasaya treasure. That Kasaya treasure floated in midair, and the Buddha light that it emitted protected everyone within it. Then, under Lin Feng's lead, everyone rushed into the darkness. Just as they entered the darkness, an extremely terrifying force surged over, wanting to devour a group of people. However, that terrifying force was blocked by the Buddhist light that fell from the Kasaya. Chapter 3749. Seeing that this Kasaya had withstood the terrifying power surging in the darkness, everyone couldn't help but show joy on their faces. This Kasaya was really extraordinary. Its divinity was powerful. Everyone's confidence in being able to escape greatly increased. Lin Feng led the way in front. He knew the power of the Kasaya. However, Lin Feng still looked tense, because Lin Feng knew how terrifying the dark erosion was. Now, they were inside the dark erosion. If they weren't careful, God knew what terrible things would happen. Waves of gloomy and terrifying aura spread. In the darkness, there seemed to be some terrifying creatures entrenched. And now, those terrifying creatures were staring at them. Lin Feng didn't see those terrifying creatures. However, he had an intuition. Lin Feng's intuition told him that such a terrifying existence must be lurking in the darkness. Therefore, Lin Feng felt a strong sense of urgency and crisis in his heart now. He had to speed up, leave the area enveloped by the dark erosion. Only in this way could they get out of danger. Everyone's speed was very fast. However, the area enveloped by the dark erosion was too large. Therefore, the group of people couldn't leave the area enveloped by the dark erosion in time. This situation was naturally extremely bad for Lin Feng and the others. The longer they stayed in the dark erosion, the worse it would be, because the dark erosion, it would gradually figure out the actual situation of Lin Feng and the others. When the time came, once the attack was launched, it would inevitably cause a lot of casualties. Walala sound suddenly resounded. That sound, it seemed to be the sound of chains colliding. Lin Feng had seen the dark erosion several times. However, until now, he didn't know what secrets were hidden in the dark erosion. He didn't even know what was in the dark erosion. This was the dark erosion. It was too terrifying, and it was full of unknowns. Be careful, Lin Feng said in a deep voice. Everyone's expression couldn't help but become slightly solemn. But thinking of the protection of the Kasaya treasure, his tense mood relaxed a little. Clatter, clatter. The sound of chains colliding was heard again. A chain flew over from the darkness. The Buddha's light intertwined and blocked the chain, and the Buddha's light caused damage to the chain. The surface of the chain actually burned. However, at this time, dense runes appeared on the surface of the chain. Those runes were very powerful and dissolved the damage caused by the Buddha's light to the chain. In the end, the chain retracted back into the dark erosion. The Kasaya is really powerful, someone said. He let out a long breath. Seeing the Kasaya, he couldn't help smiling. The Kasaya's powers many people. Everyone could rely on this Kasaya. The group continued to move forward in the darkness. His speed was pushed to the limit, but they still couldn't get out. Lin Feng felt that something was wrong. He felt as if he had fallen into an illusion. He wandered back and forth in the darkness. He couldn't get out too far. But when Lin Feng sensed it carefully, he found that it wasn't an illusion. He tried to break the illusion with the sky demon snake's eye, but he failed in the end. True and false. The dark erosion is so terrifying. This is troublesome. Lin Feng's expression became solemn. He felt that the situation was very bad. The dark erosion trapped them in the illusion, but they couldn't find a way to get out. Little friend, isn't the situation a little wrong? Lu Tanshan was a fifth-layer holy emperor after all. He also felt that something was wrong and couldn't help but say, said Lin Feng, nodding. We're probably trapped in an illusion. It's an illusion created by the dark corrosion. It's extremely terrifying. Hearing that, everyone's expression changed abruptly. We've been walking for so long. Have we been walking aimlessly? What do we do now? How can we get out of the illusion? If we can't get out of the illusion, we won't be trapped in the dark erosion, right? Many cultivators discussed. Their faces were very pale. The dark erosion made them feel terrified. I have something here, but I don't know if it will be useful at this moment. At this moment, a cultivator said. After hearing this cultivator's words, everyone's spirits were suddenly lifted. Lin Feng asked, "What is it?" "A puppet rat," the cultivator said. Then he took out a small black mouse. However, this small black mouse wasn't made of flesh and blood. Instead, it was made of special materials. "What's the use of this puppet rat?" Lin Feng asked doubtfully. The cultivator said, "The puppet rat is refined with a secret method. It can sense very weak auras. When we first entered the dark erosion, we definitely weren't pulled into the illusion. It must have been at a certain time that we fell into the illusion. I can let the puppet rat sense our auras. Perhaps it can rely on its sensing of our auras to bring us out of the illusion. Our auras will gradually dissipate with the passage of time. There's no time to lose. Let the puppet rat give it a try," Lin Feng said. "Okay." The cultivator nodded. Then he said something to the puppet rat. The puppet rat directly jumped to the ground and kept sniffing the surrounding auras with its nose. Finally, the puppet rat determined the location. Then the puppet rat ran forward. The puppet rat's speed was extremely fast. Lin Feng and the others followed closely behind. This puppet rat is actually so magical. Many people were extremely surprised. Under the puppet rat's lead, Lin Feng and the others actually walked out of the illusion. TSK, 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 tisk. However, as soon as they walked out of the illusion, they heard a sinister and terrifying laughter. In the darkness, there seemed to be a terrifying existence beside them. A cultivator let out a loud roar. Something terrifying happened. Several cultivators who let out a loud roar turned into ugly werewolves. Then, those cultivators who had turned into ugly werewolves, they directly pounced on the surrounding cultivators. Puff, puff. One cultivator after another was killed by those cultivators who had turned into ugly werewolves. "Kill them!" Lin Feng shouted in a deep voice. Everyone hurriedly attacked. They killed all the cultivators who had turned into werewolves. However, at this moment, a sinister voice came from the darkness. It was an extremely ancient language. Lin Feng and the others couldn't understand it clearly. At this moment, many people let out painful roars. Their bodies were about to turn into werewolves. Even Lin Feng felt that his body was about to turn into a werewolf. Curse! The other party was chanting an incantation, activating an extremely terrifying werewolf curse. Chapter 3750. An unknown existence had activated the curse. Basically, everyone would find it difficult to resist this curse. This was the most terrifying thing. Lin Feng now had a new understanding of how dangerous the dark erosion was. Facing the danger of the dark erosion, no one could underestimate it, or else they would die without a burial place. Lin Feng saw that the people around him were transforming into werewolves. It was the same for himself. He had to dispel the curse, or else everyone would not have a good ending. Fortunately, Lin Feng had mastered the Tao of Destiny. At this critical moment, Lin Feng began to chant an incantation. In front of the great Tao of Destiny, even the most bizarre Tao of curse will lose its effect. As Lin Feng finished chanting, waves of terrifying fluctuations swept across heaven and earth. The Tao of Destiny condensed the power of destiny. When the power of destiny descended, it instantly destroyed the power of curse that enveloped everyone. The Tao of Destiny, it was the most powerful, greatest, and most sacred Tao. The Tao of Destiny could break all laws. This point, no other grand Tao could compare to the grand Tao of Destiny. After breaking the power of curse, Lin Feng did not stop. He continued to chant the incantation. When the power of destiny descends, the curse hidden in the darkness will definitely be punished by the Tao of Destiny. Bang! When Lin Feng finished chanting, a large amount of power of destiny descended from the sky and instantly bombarded the darkness. Screech! An incomparably shrill scream could be heard. In the darkness, the terrifying creature that activated the werewolf curse suffered a heavy blow. Die! Lin Feng locked onto the location of that existence and summoned 3 stone swords with all his might. Whoosh! 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 The 3 stone swords slashed toward the terrifying existence as fast as lightning. Puff! 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 A tearing sound could be heard. Soon after, the news spread. Is he dead? Many people cried out in alarm. Roar! But at this moment, an angry roar was heard. That existence wasn't dead, but it should have been heavily injured by Lin Feng. The 3 stone swords returned and were put away by Lin Feng. Let's go, Lin Feng said in a deep voice. He chose a direction. He quickly flew over. The rest of the people followed closely behind. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The sound of flapping wings resounded in the darkness. It sounded like a moth darting into a flame. At the very beginning, the sound wasn't particularly obvious, but it soon became extremely obvious. It was as if an endless swarm of insects was charging towards them. Be careful, Lin Feng said in a deep voice. Just as he finished speaking, a swarm of black insects flew over. Those black bugs were the size of a thumb and looked like a piece of black iron the size of a thumbnail. Although the black bugs weren't big, they had hundreds of claws. It was extremely strange. When the dense swarm of black bugs enveloped the defensive light shield formed by the Buddhist treasure Kasaya, those black bugs began to gnaw at the defensive light shield formed by the Buddhist treasure Kasaya. The Buddhist treasure Kasaya was extremely harmful to the black bugs, because when the Buddhist light shone on those black bugs, a large number of them directly died. But there were too many of them, and these black bugs were completely fearless as they gnawed at the light shield formed by the Buddhist treasure Kasaya. Under the gnawing of these black bugs, the defensive light shield formed by the Buddhist treasure Kasaya became thinner and thinner. After seeing this scene, everyone's face revealed a horrified expression. What exactly was this black bug? They could actually gnaw at the light shield formed by the Buddhist light. There were so many of them, so it was completely unrealistic to want to completely exterminate these black bugs. Now, Lin Feng and the others could only do before the defensive light shield formed by the Kasaya was destroyed by the black bugs. They could smoothly get out of the dark erosion. As long as they could get out of danger. The group didn't pay attention to those black bugs. Under the protection of the Kasaya, everyone quickly rushed out. Finally, they saw a glimmer of light. The darkness eroded the light outside. We're about to rush out. Many people's eyes couldn't help but light up. Now, they were not far from rushing out of the dark erosion. Everyone pushed their speed to the limit, but they still failed. Before the defensive light shield formed by the Buddhist light was destroyed, they couldn't successfully rush out of the dark erosion. The dense swarm of black bugs directly destroyed the defensive light shield formed by the Buddhist light. Then, the black bugs swarmed towards them. Many cultivators took out their magic treasures. Under the protection of their magic treasures, they rushed out because there was only a short distance left. As long as they could rush out, they could get out of danger. But those black bugs were too terrifying. Many people were surrounded by the black bugs on the way. The black bugs directly gnawed their defensive magic treasures full of holes. Those defensive magic treasures were damaged, and those cultivators were instantly drowned by the dense swarm of black bugs. The black bugs completely devoured the cultivators surrounded by them. Not even their bones were left. Lin Feng's expression was solemn. He took out the ruler's armor. Under the protection of the ruler's armor, he temporarily blocked the attacks of these black bugs. The most important thing now was not to fight against these black bugs, but to quickly leave the dark erosion. Suddenly, Lin Feng felt a cold aura surging from behind. He looked behind him and saw a terrifying creature appear. That terrifying creature had a human body, a wolf's head, a dragon's tail, a pair of huge wings, and sharp claws. He didn't know what kind of creature it was. Its body was pierced through with 3 bloody holes, and blood was still flowing out. That terrifying creature slapped at Lin Feng with its claws. Lin Feng was shocked. This terrifying creature must be the terrifying existence that activated the curse earlier. Its curse had been broken by Lin Feng's great destiny technique, and it had been injured by Lin Feng's 3 stone swords. This terrifying existence had been following him all this time. Lin Feng wanted to use the heaven patching technique to dodge this attack, but he found that a strange curse power was suppressing him. He couldn't use the heaven patching technique, and that terrifying creature's attack had already arrived. A muffled bang was heard. That terrifying attack directly hit Lin Feng's chest. Receiving this terrifying attack, Lin Feng was sent flying. In the air, he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. He was wearing the ruler's armor, but he was still injured by it. Chapter 3751. Damn it, this monster is injured so badly, but it's still so powerful. Lin Feng was extremely depressed. It seemed like this monster hated him to the core. That's why it chased after him. A wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. The most important thing right now is to run. After Lin Feng was sent flying by the monster, he turned around and ran. If he can't win, he'll run. This is Lin Feng's usual style. A man knows when to yield and when not. This is especially true in the world of cultivators. A moment of forbearance is for a future eruption. Lowly creature, you can't escape. Void of death ripple. Suddenly, that terrifying creature launched an extremely terrifying attack on Lin Feng. The surrounding void. Ripples spread out from the shock waves. Every ripple contained a bone-chilling power of death. Some cultivators were touched by the power of death. Those cultivators' bodies immediately turned into dried corpses. Seeing this, Lin Feng was shocked. This power of death is too terrifying, isn't it? It directly deprived that cultivator of his lifespan. Anyone who saw this kind of attack would feel their hair stand on end. At the very beginning, Lin Feng's expression was also very serious. But soon, Lin Feng showed a relaxed expression. In the past, he refined an eye of death into his left eye. Eye of death. It can reflect the power of death. And this power of death can deprive the life of all cultivators. The attack of this terrifying creature that came out of the endless ghost sand. Almost exactly the same. Lin Feng activated the Eye of Death. The Eye of Death shot out beams of light, which collided with the surging power of death in the surroundings. In the end, two types of power of death. Both of them were destroyed. Seeing this, Lin Feng showed a happy expression. Sure enough, it was as he guessed. The Eye of Death really dispelled this terrifying creature's attack. South. After dispelling this attack, Lin Feng stepped on the 8-directional world and pushed his speed to the limit, quickly rushing into the distance. It was only at this moment that the terrifying creature returned to its senses. It couldn't believe that Lin Feng was able to block its attack. It roared furiously and chased after Lin Feng. However, Lin Feng was the first to move. His speed was too fast. He rushed out of the dark erosion as fast as lightning. "I'm finally out," Lin Feng let out a long sigh. This was not a place to stay for long. He quickly flew into the distance. Lin Feng saw more people rushing out. He just didn't know if Lu Tanshan, Fairy Shui Yi, Zhong Haimei, Nangong Lingbing, and the others had also escaped alive. This was especially true for Fairy Shui Yi, Zhong Haimei, and Nangong Lingbing. They were all top-notch beauties. If he died here, what a pity. However, everyone has their own destiny. If they really died here, it could only be said that this was their fate. A terrifying aura filled the air. In the dark erosion, terrifying creatures constantly rushed out to chase after the cultivators who escaped. The monster that attacked Lin Feng also chased after Lin Feng. He wanted to kill Lin Feng. However, Lin Feng had already run somewhere. In the distance, Lin Feng stood on a mountain peak and looked in the direction of Sun City. Sun City was shrouded in dark erosion and blood clouds. In addition to the dark erosion and blood clouds, there were also so many terrifying endless ghost sand creatures. Sun City, it was completely over. I saw cultivators being devoured by the dark erosion. Those cultivators who were devoured instantly turned into skeletons. I don't know what devoured their flesh and blood, but this time we don't seem to have encountered such a situation. I don't know why. Lin Feng couldn't help but mutter to himself. He felt that the situation was very strange. The dark erosion only imprisoned Lin Feng and the others in an illusion. Later on, the creatures that attacked Lin Feng and the others were all creatures that walked out of the endless ghost sand. It wasn't the dark erosion. If the dark erosion attacked Lin Feng and the others, it would be very difficult for them to escape from the dark erosion. If someone told Lin Feng that the dark erosion could bury immortals, Lin Feng didn't think it was a big deal. The dark erosion was indeed too terrifying. It was filled with countless mysteries. Anyone's expression would change when they heard it. Perhaps it's dealing with the person who has that item. The demon lord said, "You mean the item that the creatures of the endless ghost sand are looking for? The person who has that item has also entered the dark erosion?" Lin Feng said in surprise. Yes. The demon lord nodded. Thinking about it carefully, it was indeed possible. If it wasn't for this reason, why did the dark erosion only use an illusion to trap them? And why didn't it attack them? For the creatures of the endless ghost sand to come so heavily, I really don't know what kind of treasure it is. Lin Feng couldn't help but be very curious. This perhaps only the person who has that treasure and a few top existences in the endless ghost sand would know. The demon lord said. Lin Feng nodded. He didn't leave, still waiting outside. When dawn arrived, the dark erosion quickly dissipated, and the blood clouds also quickly left. Only the broken ancient city was left. Lin Feng flew toward Yang City. When he arrived, Lin Feng couldn't help but sigh. The bones in Yang City were piled up like a mountain. The cultivator's flesh and blood had been devoured. Only the bones were left. The creatures of the endless ghost sand were too terrifying. Everywhere they went, it would definitely cause a disaster. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At that moment, someone flew over from afar. There were about 100 people in this group, each with a powerful aura. A few of them were powerful, and the aura they emitted was unfathomable. Lin Feng saw that this group of people seemed to be led by a female cultivator. The female cultivator was tall and slender. She wore a long skirt which completely revealed her graceful and moving figure. With such a perfect figure, she must have a beautiful face. But unfortunately, the woman was wearing a veil, so he couldn't see her face clearly. "Young miss, there's someone over there." A cultivator pointed at Lin Feng. "Call him over." The woman said. Her voice was extremely gentle and pleasant. "Yes." The cultivator replied. Then he flew towards Lin Feng. "Brat, come with me. My master has something to ask you." The cultivator looked at Lin Feng with an indifferent expression and spoke with an unquestionable tone. This was the aura of a superior. This person was definitely not a mortal. Lin Feng snorted disdainfully. Chapter 3752. "Brat, how dare you? I told you to go over. Go over. How dare you put on airs in front of me? Are you asking for a beating?" The cultivator looked at Lin Feng coldly, as if he would immediately teach Lin Feng a lesson if Lin Feng dared to say no again. Is this the attitude of asking questions? Since when did a dog slave dare to call himself I? Lin Feng pursed his lips and said. He emphasized the words dog slave. Obviously, he was deliberately reminding this cultivator that he was just someone else's slave. However, in reality, this cultivator's identity was extremely extraordinary. If word got out, there was probably no one in the bitter cold state who didn't know about it. "Brat, you'll end up in a miserable state if you talk too much." The cultivator closed in on Lin Feng as if he wanted to attack Lin Feng. "Tian Meng, don't make things difficult for this young master. It was indeed our fault for being rude first." At this moment, the woman flew over. The rest of the people also flew over with her. Over 100 strong cultivators were looking at Lin Feng in a cold and detached way. Each and every one of them looked ice cold. Naturally, they heard the conversation between Lin Feng and Tian Meng. A young cultivator like Lin Feng actually did not know how to appreciate favors. This made these people who were usually high and mighty couldn't help but want to kill him. In the world of cultivators, it was such a reality. They could kill someone at the slightest disagreement. This kind of thing. It was really common. Yes, miss. Although Tian Meng really wanted to humiliate and torture Lin Feng, he did not dare to disobey the woman's orders. Therefore, after hearing the woman's words, he retreated to the side. "Who are you? Why are you in Yang City?" The woman asked. "Who are you? Why are you in Yang City?" Lin Feng asked back. Tian Meng said coldly, "Brat, my miss is asking you a question, not the other way around. Don't fail to appreciate her kindness." Lin Feng said indifferently, "I'm talking to your Mississippi. You're just a servant. Do you have the right to interrupt?" Lin Feng's ability to ridicule others was naturally the best in the world. Hearing Lin Feng use the title of servant to ridicule him again, Tian Meng was so angry that his entire body was trembling. If it wasn't for his miss not to make a move, he would have already made a move. "Young master, why do you have to ridicule others like this?" The woman said, "When did I ridicule others?" Lin Feng replied indifferently. At first, no one realized what was going on, but soon everyone reacted. He also understood what Lin Feng meant. When did he ridicule? Obviously, he was saying that the person he was insulting was not human. Lin Feng was cursing Tian Meng. If one's IQ was not high enough, I think you should let your subordinates do it. Suppress this kid. Miss doesn't need to ask him anything. Directly use the soul-searching technique on this kid. Then you can know everything you want to know, Tian Meng said, looking fiercely at Lin Feng. That's right. This kid doesn't want face. Then there's no need to continue giving him face. Some cultivators echoed. Lin Feng sneered. These people were really self-righteous, although they were powerful, except for that woman. Lin Feng didn't care about the others at all. The woman said, "It's just a small matter. There's no need to make such a fuss." Everyone was puzzled. They didn't know why their miss stopped them. They thought that they knew their miss quite well. Their miss was definitely not a person who would suffer losses. Moreover, she couldn't bear to see her subordinates suffer losses. Therefore, at this time, she would usually take counterattack. But today, their miss didn't do so. It was very strange. And this kid in front of them was at the immortal emperor realm at such a young age. He was indeed talented. But so what? No matter how talented he was, his cultivation time was too short. He didn't grow. Everything was for naught. Wasn't it easy to deal with this kid? But they didn't dare to disobey the orders of their Mississippi, especially Tian Meng. She gritted her teeth in hatred, but could only endure it. Lin Feng said impatiently, "What do you want to ask? Hurry up and ask. If you don't, I'm leaving." "Did you see what happened yesterday?" the woman asked. Lin Feng said, "I saw it. I witnessed the entire process. Can you tell me a little?" the woman asked. Lin Feng revealed a playful smile and said, "Why?" The woman said, "We can pay you a certain amount of compensation." Lin Feng said, "There's no need for compensation. How about this? Take off your veil. Let me see what you look like." "Kid, how dare you be rude to my miss? You're courting death." A group of cultivators glared at Lin Feng. They couldn't wait to take out their spiked clubs and smash Lin Feng into pieces. Lin Feng said indifferently, "It's rare to see you ask someone about something with such an attitude. Don't be too arrogant. Otherwise, you'll fall sooner or later." A cultivator said fiercely, "Shouldn't you be saying this to yourself?" "Am I arrogant? I'm not. Even if I'm arrogant, I have the right to be arrogant," Lin Feng said with a matter-of-fact expression. "An immortal emperor dares to say that you have the right to be arrogant? Who gave you such confidence?" Tian Meng sneered. "All right, everyone, please stop talking so much. Since young master wants to see my appearance, it's not impossible, but after seeing it, young master, please tell me everything you know." The woman said, "Of course. I'm a person. I always keep my word." Lin Feng said indifferently. The woman nodded. Then she took off her veil. Then a delicate face was revealed. It was a face so beautiful that it could take one's breath away. Lin Feng suddenly thought of a poem. It could describe this woman's appearance and temperament. A cool breeze gently swayed her jade sleeves, and her skirt slanted, revealing a golden lotus. Her eyebrows were like jade feathers, and her skin was like mutton fat. Her face was lined with peach blossom petals, and her hair was piled with golden phoenix silk. Her eyes were clear and enchanting. The slender and charming spring bamboo shoots. The slanted red silk floated beautifully. The high hairpin and jade pearls shone brightly. Looking back with a smile, she was so charming that the 6 palaces paled in comparison. Such a beautiful face was really enough to make people fall head over heels for her. TSK, could you be that Meng Bingling? Lin Feng thought of the Lord of Yang City, Meng Bingling. It was rumored that her cultivation was powerful, and she was so beautiful that she didn't seem like a mortal woman. It seemed to be related to this woman in front of him. It was quite fitting. "I'm not Meng Bingling," the woman said. Then she put on the veil again, covering her peerless face. Then he said, "Please tell us what happened yesterday." Lin Feng said, "The creatures in the endless ghost sand surrounded Yang City under the lead of the blood cloud and the dark erosion. Then they launched an attack on Yang City. Countless people died, tragically, and those terrifying creatures seemed to be looking for something, because they kept asking, 'Where is the thing? Where is the thing?'" Chapter 3753. Naturally, the expression on the woman's face could not be hidden from Lin Feng. Lin Feng was very surprised. Could it be that this woman, did she know what those creatures that walked out of the endless ghost sand were looking for? Or else, why would she show such an expression? Lin Feng had always felt that woman, it was very likely that she really knew about this. However, Lin Feng did not ask her, because Lin Feng knew that even if he asked, this woman would definitely not tell him. Rather than that, it was better not to ask. "That's all I know. I'll tell you everything," Lin Feng said. "Good. Thank you very much," the woman said. Lin Feng waved at the woman and then flew into the distance. In the blink of an eye, he had disappeared without a trace. After Lin Feng left, Tian Meng asked in confusion, "Young mistress, why are you so polite to that brat? Is that brat worthy?" Tian Meng hated Lin Feng so much that he gritted his teeth. Moreover, he did not put Lin Feng in his eyes at all. In his opinion, it was too easy to deal with Lin Feng. It was simply a piece of cake. However, he could not understand why his young mistress would stop him from dealing with Lin Feng. Now that Lin Feng had left, Tian Meng was finally able to ask the question in his heart. "He is not an ordinary person," the woman said. Tian Meng said, "That brat's lifespan seems to have just passed 100 years, but he is already cultivated to the immortal emperor realm. He is indeed not an ordinary person. In addition, he is a human cultivator, which is even more difficult. However, his realm is still there. It shouldn't be difficult to deal with him, right?" Tian Meng was a proud person, and he was indeed powerful. Therefore, he had this confidence. "Perhaps he is much more terrifying than I imagined," the woman said. Tian Meng did not directly refute the woman, so he did not say anything else. "Meng Bingling should not be dead. Let's look for her. After we find her, we'll bring her here," the woman said. "Yes, young mistress," everyone replied. Then they separated. Then they went to look for Meng Bingling's whereabouts. After Lin Feng left, he planned on finding the whereabouts of Zhong Haimei and Nangong Lingbing. He wondered if the two of them were still alive. Lin Feng naturally hoped that the two were still alive. If such a peerless beauty were to perish, it would be unthinkable. What a pity! Furthermore, Lin Feng still had to rescue their master, Fairy Fanjun, with the two girls. This involved the possibility that Lin Feng might obtain the fourth type of hockey. Therefore, this was a very important matter for Lin Feng. On this day, Lin Feng arrived at an ancient town called Wangxian Town. The reason for this name was said to be because there was a river 30 li west of the ancient town called the Nile River. The Nile River was the largest river in the bitter cold state. As the river flowed down, there was a towering immortal stone. It was said that many people gained enlightenment from looking at that immortal stone. Therefore, this place attracted many people. Because of the immortal stone, the town was renamed Overlooking Immortal Town. After arriving at Overlooking Immortal Town, Lin Feng actually found clues about Zhong Haimei and Nangong Lingbing. The two girls were also looking for Lin Feng, but they couldn't find Lin Feng. Therefore, they spent money at the Mercenary Association and let the mercenaries of the Mercenary Association spread the news that they were going to the imperial capital. They would wait for Lin Feng in the imperial capital, Every time they passed by a town, they would spend money to find the mercenary association to spread the news. And Lin Feng found out about this when he arrived at the first town. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. These two women were really bold. They weren't afraid of exposing themselves and being caught by their enemies. It seemed that their relationship with their master, Fairy Fanjun, was indeed very deep, or else they wouldn't take such a big risk to spread the news that they were going to the imperial capital. Lin Feng planned to go to the imperial capital to find the two girls. This place was rather far from the imperial capital of the Divine Kingdom of Despair, and there were basically no space-time wormholes in the great heavenly sage world. Those space-time wormholes were only controlled by a limited number of top forces, and they could only be sent to certain limited routes. The reason why the space-time wormholes in the great heavenly sage world were so rare was because the laws of heaven and earth here were too powerful. It was very difficult to open a space-time wormhole in the void world constructed by such powerful laws of heaven and earth. Therefore, most of the time, they could only choose to fly. Before going to the imperial capital, Lin Feng planned to take a look at the Immortal Stone. Since the Immortal Stone was rumored to be so magical, there must be something special about it. Lin Feng rested in the ancient town for the next day, and then set off for the Nile River. When he arrived at the Nile River, Lin Feng was shocked. The Nile River was indeed too big. One couldn't see the end of it. It was really inconceivable. It was very moving. Many people who came here were amazed at the width of the Nile River. Some people said that the widest part of the Nile River was 200 miles wide. Even in the narrower areas, it was still more than 20 miles wide. It was indeed the largest river in the bitter cold state. It was really shocking. There's a dragon palace in the Nile River, so the Nile River isn't calm. Someone said, this incident caused quite a stir. The dragon palace, in the eyes of many, was filled with a mythical aura. It can't be considered a real dragon palace. It's said that its ancestor was a demonic flood dragon who obtained cultivation and transformed into a demonic dragon. Later on, it gradually multiplied and became more and more powerful. That's why the dragon palace was built. Another person said, however, no matter how the master of the Nile River Dragon Palace transformed, it had already become a force to be reckoned with. Those creatures were very terrifying. They weren't something that ordinary people could provoke. Cultivators look at the Immortal Stone. The Dragon Palace won't interfere. All these years, the Dragon Palace has been on good terms with many forces in the bitter cold state. An old man said, in the bitter cold state, other than the 9 top forces of the divine nation of despair, there were some other forces. However, these forces didn't occupy an orthodox position. The Nile River Dragon Palace was one of them. The creatures in the endless ghost sand were also one of them. Of course, the Nile River Dragon Palace was very different from the terrifying creatures in the endless ghost sand. However, there were rumors. The ancestor of the Nile River Dragon Palace was related to the creatures in the endless ghost sand. However, no one could prove this. Moreover, the ancestor of the Nile River Dragon Palace had already fallen many years ago. It was even more difficult to verify the authenticity of these things. Although the Dragon Palace won't actively attack cultivators, there are many terrifying creatures in the Nile River that aren't bound by the Dragon Palace. Those terrifying creatures will attack cultivators. Therefore, if you want to look at the Immortal Stone, you have to take the giant ship built by the 9 top forces. Take the ship. A cultivator said, the Immortal Stone was located in a rather special place. The river was as wide as 199 miles. The Immortal Stone was located in the center. This place was very strange because the width of the Nile River involved the number 99. Moreover, it was said that For hundreds of millions of years, the Nile River had undergone drastic changes. This place had always been 199 miles wide. Nothing had ever changed. Chapter 3754. Lin Feng heard many legends about the Nile River Enlightenment Immortal Stone. When he heard those legends, his expression couldn't help but become slightly solemn. That area involved the number 99. It was indeed too strange. He didn't know. That place. What kind of shocking secret was hidden there? Lin Feng boarded the ancient ship of the 9 major forces. Although he was powerful, he didn't want to encounter those troublesome things. That would only delay his time. Riding the ancient ship of the 9 major forces was obviously the easiest. Of course, the price of riding this ancient ship to the Enlightenment Immortal Stone was not cheap. Each person would need 1,000 immortal stones. However, these immortal stones were naturally nothing to Lin Feng. "I'm Yang Qinghai. Brother, you look familiar. How should I address you?" When Lin Feng stood on the bow of the ship and looked into the distance, a cultivator cupped his fists and asked. Lin Feng didn't know this cultivator, and he felt that this cultivator didn't know him either. This greeting was purely because this cultivator was also a human. Humans were very rare. So, this person naturally felt friendly when he saw him, a human cultivator. It was very normal for him to want to befriend him. "You can call me Ji." Lin Feng said. Ji. It was the surname of Lin Feng's mother. Now, Lin Feng planned to use this name as his incarnation to walk in the world. The demon lord was very surprised. In the past, if Lin Feng wanted to befriend someone, he would usually say his real name. Because Lin Feng was fearless, even if his identity was leaked and strong enemies came. Lin Feng was also not afraid of a battle. But this time, Lin Feng said an alias, which was very rare. Moreover, this alias was very particular. Ji. It was the Ji of the era. It was also the surname of the sovereign emperor clan. So it's Brother Ji. Yang Qinghai cupped his fists. Lin Feng also cupped his fists in greeting. It was not easy to meet humans. That was why Lin Feng decided to get acquainted with this cultivator named Yang Qinghai. As for the name Ji, it was not an alias that Lin Feng came up with on the spot. He was the successor of the sovereign clan. Lin Feng thought, the sovereign race shouldn't be buried by history like this. Therefore, in addition to his identity as Lin Feng, he planned to use the identity of Ji to travel the world. The name Lin Feng was a direct descendant of Lin Qi's lineage. As for the identity of Ji, it was an identity that had been passed down through the sovereign clan. Of course, Lin Feng didn't use the identity of Ji because he was afraid of revealing his identity. In terms of Lin Feng's cultivation, in this world, the only cultivators who could threaten him were emperor lords and above. However, experts of this level were too rare. As such, Lin Feng didn't have to worry about his identity being exposed. Now, Lin Feng was using the identity of Ji to walk around. Not long after, he would let the world know. The greatest race, the sovereign race, it was still the torch flame inheritance. Brother Ji, are you from the Bitter Han state? Yang Qinghai asked curiously. I'm not from the Bitter Han state. I'm from outside, Lin Feng said. The two of them began to talk. After a while, Lin Feng found out that Yang Qinghai was also from outside. But there was more information. Yang Qinghai didn't reveal it. At this moment, a commotion came from afar. Some cultivators had arrived on the ancient ship, causing quite a commotion. Lin Feng looked into the distance and saw a young man. That man was incomparably handsome. He was dressed in a long robe, making him look like a banished immortal. Who is that person? Lin Feng asked in surprise. With so many people surrounding that young man, It was enough to show how extraordinary that young master's identity was. The eighth prince of Despair Divine Kingdom, Dugamingho, Yang Qinghai said, although there were many forces in the Bitter Han state, all of them, including the 9 great forces, were under the rule of the Divine Kingdom of Despair. The royal family of the Divine Kingdom of Despair was the most powerful force. The 9 great forces, they also bowed their heads. So, to be honest, the 9 great forces, they belonged to the subjects, and the royal family of the Divine Kingdom of Despair belonged to the monarch. In the Bitter Han state, the cultivators with the highest status were not from the 9 great forces. It was from the royal family of the Divine Kingdom of Despair, especially the son of the Divine Kingdom of Despair's king, the direct descendant, the future successor of the Divine Kingdom of Despair. His identity was the most honorable. No wonder so many people surrounded that young cultivator like stars surrounding the moon. It turned out that his identity was so extraordinary. Your Highness, I've seen that guy before. At this moment, a cultivator pointed at Lin Feng. Oh, you've seen him before. The 8th prince, Dugamingho, looked at the cultivator beside him in surprise. Previously, outside Yang City, when I was with the eldest princess, I saw this kid. The cultivator said, if Lin Feng saw this person, he might have some impression. This cultivator was one of the group of people he saw outside Yang City. The eldest princess he was talking about was the woman in the lead. After the eldest princess found out about Dugamingho's arrival, she sent this person to meet up with Dugamingho. Then she brought Dugamingxian to see her. Dugamingho still respected his elder sister very much. Therefore, he followed this cultivator onto the ancient ship and went to see his elder sister. That person is him. Dugamingho raised his eyebrows slightly. He had heard about what happened outside Yang City from the cultivators around him. Now, he actually saw the main character. Is this kid really, as you said before? In front of so many of you, he's quite arrogant? Dugamingho frowned and asked. He wasn't a second-generation heir. On the contrary, he was a very extraordinary person. He knew how powerful his elder sister was. He also knew how terrifying his elder sister's methods were. If an ordinary person acted like that in front of his elder sister, how could his elder sister spare him? However, his elder sister didn't attack the human cultivator not far away, and even said that the human cultivator was extraordinary. This caused Dugamingho to be extremely surprised. However, Dugamingho really couldn't see anything special about Lin Feng that was worth paying attention to. If he really had to find a reason, in Dugamingho's opinion, Lin Feng's talent was not bad. It's indeed not easy to cultivate to the immortal emperor realm at this age. Could it be that elder sister values this person's talent? Dugamingho was puzzled. However, he felt that things weren't like that. Let's go. Let's go and meet that brat. I want to see what's so extraordinary about that brat. Dugamingho said. As his voice faded, this person walked towards Lin Feng. The rest of the people also followed and walked towards Lin Feng. Many people's gazes followed Dugamingho's footsteps and looked at Lin Feng. Seeing Dugamingho take the initiative to walk towards a cultivator, everyone was very strange. Who was that young cultivator? Dugamingho. Chapter 37:55. Lin Feng saw Dugamingho and the others walking towards him. His expression was indifferent. He did not know why this group of people was walking towards him. Lin Feng did not recognize the cultivator standing beside Dugamingho. After all, there were more than 100 people outside Yang City. Lin Feng only glanced at the crowd. Attention! He focused on that woman. Therefore, Lin Feng did not remember the others clearly. Soon, these people came to Lin Feng's side. Kid, do you still remember me? The cultivator, who had seen Lin Feng before, asked. This person was called Lu Senator. His cultivation was at the Imperial Emperor realm. He was very powerful. He was the guard commander of the divine nation of despair. When Lu Sun looked at Lin Feng, he had a condescending expression. Lin Feng said, "Who are you? Why should I remember you?" Lu Sen's expression instantly froze. Lin Feng did not give him any face at all. Lu Sun felt like he had lost face. He was looking at Lin Feng in an ice-cold way. "Kid, last time, the eldest princess was there, so Tianmeng did not teach you a lesson. Do you think you will be so lucky this time?" Lu Sun said coldly. Lin Feng was slightly stunned. He felt that this guy in front of him was really crazy. He came to him and said a lot of strange things. However, Lin Feng quickly came back to his senses. Tianmeng's name sounded familiar. Then Lin Feng remembered who Tianmeng was. Wasn't she the arrogant and self-righteous guy he had seen outside Yang City? The eldest princess this guy was talking about was the woman in the lead. This shocked Lin Feng. Lin Feng did not expect that woman to be the eldest princess of the divine nation of despair. "So you're that woman's lackey outside of Yang City. I thought you were some incredible cultivator," said Lin Feng. "Kid, you're asking for it." When Lu Sun heard Lin Feng call him a dog slave, he was furious. This was how Lin Feng had described Tianmeng before. All of this, it was still vivid in Lu Sen's mind. Now, Lin Feng had described it as such. Lu Sen's anger reached the heavens. He looked at Lin Feng. It was full of awe-inspiring intent. He stepped forward, wanting to attack Lin Feng. "Take care of your dog. Otherwise, I'm afraid that my dog-beating stick technique will accidentally injure his life." Lin Feng glanced at Dugu Mingho and said, "Who is that kid? How dare he be so arrogant? Are you tired of living?" Seeing Lin Feng's arrogant look, many cultivators began to discuss in whispers. However, no one recognized Lin Feng. However, in the eyes of these cultivators, Lin Feng actually dared to offend the 8th prince of the divine kingdom of despair. Wasn't this simply courting death? "Lu Sun, back off." Dugu Mingho said, "Your Highness, this kid humiliated me. If I don't teach this kid a lesson, how can I still stand?" Lu Sun said with a gloomy expression, "I told you to back off." Dugu Mingho's face suddenly darkened. As the 8th prince of the divine kingdom of despair, Lu Sun did not immediately carry out his orders. Instead, he questioned him. This had already angered Dugu Mingho. However, Lu Sun was the eldest princess's man. Therefore, Dugu Mingho couldn't deal with Lu Senator at most. He just scolded him. Lu Sen's expression was slightly gloomy. If it was said that he was that afraid of the 8th prince, he really wasn't. After all, he followed the eldest princess. And among the princes and princesses of the divine kingdom of despair, the most powerful person in the gate of heaven was the eldest princess. If it wasn't for the fact that the eldest princess was a woman, he would have long been conferred the title of crown prince. But even if the eldest princess was a woman, she would still have the chance to inherit the position of king in the future. In the history of the divine kingdom of despair, it wasn't like there hadn't been an empress. Moreover, over the years, the eldest princess had roped in many relatives of the royal family to support her. The experts who followed the eldest princess were also the most confident. Of course, no matter how confident they were, they had to take into account Dugu Mingho's position as a prince. "I'm Dugu Mingho. How should I address you?" Dugu Mingho introduced himself, and then clasped his fists. "Gee." Lin Feng said, "Gee." Dugu Mingho frowned slightly. He searched for this name in his memory, but found nothing. "I would like to invite you in for a seat. I wonder if I have the honor." Mingho said with a smile. Many people were very surprised to see what was happening. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. They didn't understand. Why was Mingho so polite to Lin Feng? Originally, many people thought that Mingxian would make a move on Lin Feng. However, Mingho did not do so. Therefore, the whole thing was extremely strange. And in their opinion, Lin Feng's cultivation did not seem to be that strong. There was no need for Mingho to be so polite to Lin Feng. This made everyone puzzled. Lin Feng nodded and said, "All right, then let's go in and have a seat. Brother Ji, please." Mingho made a gesture of invitation. As for Lin Feng, he walked in front, as if it was a matter of course. Everyone was completely dumbfounded. Perhaps Mingho was only being polite out of courtesy, but Lin Feng was too impolite. Who does this guy think he is? Many cultivators around Mingho looked at Lin Feng with gloomy expressions. Naturally, those with status and identity walked at the very front. And Lin Feng, a brat that no one knew was actually walking at the front. This made them very angry. However, Mingho pressed his hand down, telling everyone not to be angry. Then he chased after Lin Feng. Before Mingho arrived, the people below had already taken care of everything. The most luxurious VIP room on the ancient ship had already been prepared for Mingho. Mingho and Lin Feng arrived at the private room and sat down. I heard, at that time, Brother Ji heard the creatures that walked out of the endless ghost sand shouting, "Where is the thing? Where is the thing?" Mingho poured a cup of tea for Lin Feng and said. Lin Feng nodded and said, "That's right. That's indeed the case. That woman is your big sister, right? I told him about this matter. I heard it from that fellow Lucen." Mingho said, "Your big sister seems to know what that thing is. Do you also know what that thing is?" Lin Feng looked at Mingho and asked, Chapter 3756. Lin Feng had also heard of the master, who was sealed in the endless ghost sand. However, he had only heard of it. He knew very little about the specific situation. Even Lin Feng was not particularly clear about what kind of existence the so-called master was. The only thing he knew was that the master was definitely an incomparably terrifying existence, just like the dark erosion, the blood clouds, the huge and terrifying creatures, and other existences. They were all followers of the master. That master had now awakened. However, he was still in a sealed state. Lin Feng suddenly thought of a possibility. Could it be that the thing that the creatures in the endless ghost sand were looking for could open the seal and release the master? Therefore, those creatures in the endless ghost sand were crazily looking for that treasure. Do you know the origin of that master? Lin Feng asked. I have indeed heard of it, but I have heard of many versions. I really can't confirm which version is true, Mingho said. Which versions are they? Lin Feng asked curiously. Mingho began to speak. The first version, it is said that this master is an expert who survived the innate life form era and has an immortal body. However, he was suppressed during the innate life form era. The second version, it is said that this master is a supergiant from the immortal ancient era. He was even able to compete with an expert like the Master of Gods, but in the end, he was suppressed by the Master of Gods. Hearing the second version, Lin Feng was stunned. Then he smiled bitterly. How did it involve his ancestors? Why did the Master of Gods suppress this master? Lin Feng asked doubtfully. Mingho said, We don't know much about what happened back then, but back then, the Lord of Gods was equivalent to the creator god of the post-Shintian life forms era. Perhaps it was this master who challenged the Lord of God's dignity. Lin Feng nodded. The past had indeed become a mystery. Du Ming Hao continued. The third theory is that this master is a creature that transcends epochs. Of course, whether this is true or not is not clear. Rumor has it that he was suppressed by the king of the country of 10,000 immortals. Lin Feng was very surprised, but he didn't know if any of these statements were true. If there was, then it would be too shocking. Any kind of origin. They were all extremely extraordinary. It was enough to shock the world. The 5 decays of the celestial being have appeared, and the Battle of Armageddon is about to arrive. Thus, this lord can no longer sit still and wants to quickly escape. Lin Feng said. Du Mingxian nodded and said, that is indeed a possibility. No matter how strong he is, he won't be able to resist the 5 signs of decay and the destruction of an era. However, with his strength, if he's able to break out of the seal, then perhaps he'll be able to survive the destruction of an era. After some discussion, Lin Feng had a new understanding of this Du Ming Hao. This person, his manner of speech was appropriate, and he looked very wise and far-sighted. Obviously, he was an extraordinary person. Many of the major forces would produce many second-generation young masters. Usually, they would swagger through the streets, not thinking of improving themselves, living under the protection of their ancestors. But in reality, those great forces would also nurture many top figures. For example, someone like Du Ming Hao. Lin Feng and Du Ming Hao chatted for 2 hours before leaving. After Lin Feng left, the void, slightly distorted, and an old man walked out of the distorted void. Elder son, what do you think of this person? Du Ming Hao looked at the old man. This old man was no ordinary person. He was a quasi-emperor level expert, Du Ming Hao's protector. There doesn't seem to be anything special about him, but I don't know why, but this child makes me feel very uneasy. The old man called Elder Son by Du Ming Hao said. This, Du Ming Hao's face revealed a look of bewilderment. He knew how powerful Elder Son was. Such a powerful cultivation. Lin Feng actually made Elder Son feel very uneasy. This was too inconceivable, wasn't it? There should be a secret on him, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he is so powerful. Elder Son said with a frown. It was hard for anyone to believe that Lin Feng had such terrifying strength. Perhaps, but no matter what, this guy called Ji is definitely not an ordinary person. Otherwise, with my big sister's personality, she would not have tolerated him like that. Du Ming Hao said. Elder Son said, I heard that the first princess has contacted many royal relatives to secretly discuss some matters. I heard that the royal relatives want to request the first princess to be the first successor to the throne. My big sister is indeed qualified. Compared to her, people of our generation are far inferior. Du Ming Hao said faintly. Elder Son said, Your Highness, there is no need to belittle yourself. To be honest, Your Highness' potential is not lower than the first princess. The only disadvantage is that your cultivation time is not as long as the first princess. Du Ming Hao said, These words can be said to me, but you must not let my big sister hear it. Otherwise, you should know the consequences. Elder Son said, I know. It's just that the first princess is a little too hasty. According to the clan rules, 1,000 years later, it's time for the king to step down. Actually, for us, 1,000 years is just a snap of the fingers. Although my big sister is a little anxious, sometimes you need to be more decisive. Du Ming Hao said, There is actually an old man hidden in the void. This old man's strength is not ordinary. After walking out of Du Ming Hao's box, Lin Feng could not help but raise his eyebrows. He cultivated the Tao of space. The old man hidden in the void naturally could not hide from Lin Feng. However, Lin Feng did not expose him. 3 days later, the river suddenly became turbulent. Lin Feng sensed something and walked out of the box he lived in. He looked into the distance and saw a towering mountain standing in the center of the Nile River. That towering mountain, it was surrounded by endless immortal light. It was incomparably sacred. That is the Tao Comprehension, Immortal Stone. Yang Qinghai walked over and said, Lin Feng suddenly had a dumbstruck feeling. When he first heard about the Tao Comprehension, Immortal Stone, Lin Feng thought that it was just an ordinary stone. Even if the area was a little larger, a few 100 meters tall stone was already considered huge, right? Who would have thought? Tao Comprehension, Immortal Stone. It was actually a mountain. Moreover, it was probably 10,000 meters tall. Half a day later, the ancient ship arrived at the Tao Comprehension, Immortal Stone. Lin Feng saw the 8 blood-red words written on the Tao Comprehension, Immortal Stone. Chapter 3757. Yao Lord, do you recognize the words written in blood? Lin Feng asked curiously. I wonder if the Demon Lord knows them. The Demon Lord is experienced and knowledgeable. Maybe he can recognize them, but this time, even the Demon Lord doesn't recognize those words. He said, This is the first time I've seen these ancient words. I don't know what they mean. This shocked Lin Feng. If even the Demon Lord doesn't recognize the ancient words on it, then, in this world, who else? Who can recognize the ancient words on it? One after another, many people flew toward the Enlightenment Immortal Stone. Although it was called an immortal stone, it was actually a mountain peak. The entire mountain peak was surrounded by holy light. Lin Feng and Yang Qinghai, they also ascended the mountain peak. When Lin Feng ascended the mountain peak, he discovered something unusual about this mountain peak. Above the mountain peak, there was indeed the aura of the great Tao. One could comprehend the Tao here. The higher one went, the aura of the great Tao became denser. The Tao of every place is different. The higher one goes, the more extraordinary the Tao is. However, it is also more difficult to comprehend it. Yang Qinghai said, Yes, so at this time, don't bite off more than you can chew. The most important thing is to choose a place suitable for you to comprehend the Tao. Lin Feng said. Lin Feng and Yang Qinghai separated. Everyone found a place to cultivate. At the peak, Lin Feng saw some people, including the woman he saw before. She was the eldest princess of the divine kingdom of despair. Lin Feng already knew her identity. Duga Mingho also came here. He stood beside the eldest princess and whispered something to her. The eldest princess and Duga Mingho saw Lin Feng, who had reached the peak. The eldest princess frowned slightly. Duga Mingho said, On the way here, I came into contact with this person. This person is very strange. The eldest princess said, Yes, and his origin is quite mysterious. He should be a human cultivator from the outer realm, but I don't know what race he is. It's not good to directly inquire about his background. Duga Mingxian said, As long as he doesn't stir up trouble in the divine kingdom of despair, just ignore him. The first princess said, Yes. Duga Mingho nodded. Lin Feng didn't care about the first princess, and Duga Mingho, he found a place to sit cross-legged, wanting to comprehend the heaven and earth great Tao here. He just didn't know. Would he be able to gain something? As time passed, Lin Feng gradually fell into an epiphany of the great Tao. He found himself standing on the peak of a mountain. Other than him, there was no one else. He came from beyond the heavens, and his sword can slay immortals. Suddenly, a deep voice resounded in his ears. Beyond the 9 heavens, a silhouette descended from the sky and turned into a peerless light which locked onto Lin Feng. It charged towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng was shocked. He wanted to get rid of this person. However, He was shocked to find that no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get rid of the other party's lock. The existence that had attacked. It was simply too terrifying. Looking at that terrifying attack, it was about to kill Lin Feng. Lin Feng suddenly opened his eyes from his epiphany. He realized there were some more runes in his mind, and within those runes, a powerful divine ability was recorded. The name of this divine ability was He came from beyond the heavens, and his sword can slay immortals. I really gained something. Lin Feng was shocked. This was definitely a divine ability that had never been seen before. At the highest level, one could transform into sword chi and slay immortals with one sword. Immortals, high above, looking down on the world. And this divine ability could slay immortals with one sword. So, one could imagine just how powerful was this divine ability. Lin Feng got up and planned to leave. He had already obtained the opportunity. Perhaps he could continue to comprehend some other divine abilities here. But Lin Feng felt that it was no longer necessary. The first divine ability that he comprehended was the greatest opportunity. There was no need to force the later divine abilities. Lin Feng left the mountain peak. Until he left, Lin Feng still didn't know what those blood-red words meant. He took out the ancient starship Xianyuan. This ancient starship drifted in the Nile River. It was extremely fast, and Lin Feng sat in the ancient starship Xianyuan, comprehending the mystery of the divine ability. He came from beyond the heavens, and his sword can slay immortals. Obtaining the cultivation method was one thing. Whether or not he could successfully cultivate this ability with the help of the cultivation method was another matter altogether. Of course, with Lin Feng's comprehension ability, it shouldn't be a problem to cultivate this divine ability. The current Lin Feng not only desired to obtain many powerful treasures, but also to cultivate many top divine abilities. This was all to increase his foundation. Only those who were the most prepared would be able to survive the destruction of the era. It was said that the Nile River led to the imperial capital. So, Lin Feng let his god realm clone drive the ancient starship Xianyuan along the Nile River. He came from beyond the heavens, and his sword can slay immortals. This divine ability was very profound. Lin Feng tried to comprehend it for several days, but still didn't succeed. If he wanted to successfully cultivate this divine ability, he would have to be extremely careful. It really wasn't an easy task. Even with Lin Feng's powerful comprehension ability, coupled with the word Lin, he couldn't comprehend it in a short time. This showed how difficult it was to cultivate this divine ability. Of course, Lin Feng wasn't discouraged. Instead, he was somewhat happy. The harder it was to comprehend this divine ability, the more extraordinary it was. On this day, heavy rain poured down. In the Nile River, from time to time, huge waves would roll up. Whoosh! A woman landed on Lin Feng's ancient starship Xianyuan. She stood outside the ship. A faint sacred light lingered around her body, so the rainwater couldn't drip on her body. This was a woman with an extremely graceful figure. She wore black clothes that accentuated her perfect figure. She wore a black veil, so Lin Feng couldn't clearly see her appearance. However, he could imagine that this woman was definitely a peerless beauty. The rain is pouring down. I want to rest on the ancient ship for a while. May I know if I can enter the cabin? The woman asked. Her voice was very ethereal and sounded very pleasant. Lin Feng said indifferently, "Fairy, you're injured. Are you being hunted? You should leave on your own. I don't want to get into trouble." The woman frowned slightly and said, "Although I'm injured, I don't have any enemies." Lin Feng shook his head and said, "Cultivators are sinister people. Many people like to drag innocent people into their quarrels. Fairy, you're so beautiful. You wouldn't do such a thing, right?" Young master, do you insist on me leaving? The woman asked. Yes. Lin Feng answered very straightforwardly. Perhaps we can make a deal. The woman said. Chapter 3758. I should be able to enter and talk with you, right? The woman said. Come in, Lin Feng replied. The woman entered the ancient starship, Xian Yuan. You can speak now, Lin Feng said. You will escort me to the Genu immortal sect. I can teach you a powerful divine ability or give you a powerful magical treasure. What do you think? Of course, you can also state your own conditions. If it's within my means, I'll try my best to satisfy you. The woman said. You must be Meng Bingling? Lin Feng looked at the woman in surprise. Yes, I am Meng Bingling. The woman did not hide her identity. The eldest princess of your divine nation of despair is here. You should be looking for her. Why me? Lin Feng asked. Meng Bingling sneered and said, Sometimes strangers are safer. Lin Feng fell into deep thought. It seemed Meng Bingling did not trust the eldest princess. Otherwise, she would not have said such words. Why are you looking for me? Lin Feng asked. I saw you from afar when we broke through the encirclement. You are very strong. Meng Bingling said. I didn't see you at that time. What a pity. However, it's not bad to see you now. I've always been curious about how you look like. Why don't you take off your veil and let me see? Lin Feng said with a smile. Meng Bingling was one of the top 10 beauties of Bitter Cold Prefecture. Lin Feng naturally wanted to see what she looked like, even if nothing would happen. However, he wanted to take a look, to nourish his eyes. Not bad. Meng Bingling very generously took off her veil, revealing a delicate face that could be broken by a single blow. This was an extremely beautiful face. She looked like a fairy from a painting. Beautiful. Truly beautiful. Lin Feng praised. Meng Bingling said. You've seen me. What do you think of my earlier suggestion? Young master, I can escort you, but I don't want any abilities or treasures. Lin Feng said. What do you want, young master? Meng Bingling asked with a frown. Lin Feng did not answer Meng Bingling's question. Instead, he said, if my guess is correct, those creatures from the Endless Ghost Sen are actually looking for you, right? Lin Feng said. No, you guessed wrong. Meng Bingling's voice became cold. You don't have to rush to deny it. You should have something that the creatures in the Endless Ghost Sand want. The reason why you didn't go to the first princess for help was because you were worried that the first princess would harm you. Or perhaps the first princess has already harmed you because the eldest princess also guessed that the item was in your hands. Of course, there are also some other possibilities. Some top forces know that the item is in your hands, so you are in a very dangerous situation. In addition, you are injured now, so the situation is even more dangerous. Am I right? Lin Feng smiled as he looked at Meng Bingling. That's right. You're right. Meng Bingling gave Lin Feng a deep look as she spoke. I heard that the item is related to unlocking the seal on the Endless Ghost Sen Lord. I wonder if that's true? Lin Feng said. So what if it is? So what if it isn't? Meng Bingling said. Lin Feng said, if it is, then why are so many people scheming to get their hands on it? Perhaps they want to make some sort of deal with the Endless Ghost Sen Lord. If it isn't, then it must be closely related to the creatures in the Endless Ghost Sen Lord. Otherwise, the creatures in the Endless Ghost Sen Lord wouldn't have sent so many people after it. What are you thinking? Meng Bingling asked. She looked at Lin Feng cautiously. Lin Feng said, Don't worry. I won't do anything to you. If you can tell me the whole story, I'll send you back to the Genu immortal sect. The reason Lin Feng wanted to know the whole story was because he had heard 3 different theories about the Endless Ghost Sen Lord from Dugu Mingho, He didn't know why. Lin Feng had a strong premonition in his heart. The endless ghost Sen Lord. Back then, it was really possible that the Lord of Gods had suppressed it. Of course, he didn't know whether it was true or not. These were all Lin Feng's guesses. So, Lin Feng wanted to know more about the endless ghost Sen Lord. I do have that thing. There's no harm in showing it to you, Meng Bingling said. Then, with a flip of her right hand, a treasure appeared in her hand. That treasure, it was actually a jade pendant. When he saw the jade pendant, Lin Feng couldn't help but reveal an extremely shocked expression. This didn't seem to be what he had imagined. Is this the jade pendant? Lin Feng asked in surprise. That's right, Meng Bingling said. It is said that this jade pendant is related to the restriction that suppressed the endless ghost Sen Lord. If you can control this jade pendant, then you might be able to control the endless ghost Sen Lord. Hearing this, Lin Feng couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. It was hard to imagine how terrifying the endless ghost Sen Lord was. Besides the fact that the endless ghost Sen Lord was terrifying enough, the endless ghost Sen Lord had many subordinates. Those creatures in the endless ghost Sen Lord. If they could control the endless ghost Sen Lord, then it was equivalent to controlling those terrifying creatures in the endless ghost Sen Lord. One could imagine that was such a powerful force. Perhaps it could sweep across the great heavenly sage world. So, someone wanted Meng Bingling dead. In that case, that command medallion was theirs. What do you plan to do with this jade pendant? Lin Feng asked. Destroy it. We can't let the endless ghost Sen Lord come out. Once he comes out, there will be a storm of blood. Who knows how many people will die tragically? Meng Bingling said. This thing does need to be destroyed. If it falls into the hands of an ambitious person, it will cause a disaster. However, you've had this thing for so long. Haven't you destroyed it yet? Lin Feng asked in surprise. This thing was created by the Master of Gods. It's not that easy to destroy. I need to return to the clan and borrow the clan's supreme treasure to destroy this jade pendant, Meng Bingling said. Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that the rumor is true that the endless ghost Sen Lord was really suppressed by the Master of Gods? From the clues I obtained, that's indeed the case. I just don't know why the Master of Gods suppressed the endless ghost Sen Lord back then. However, I'm sure the endless ghost Sen Lord is not a kind person. Meng Bingling said. Lin Feng nodded. Destroying this jade pendant was the most important thing now, because if the endless ghost Sen Lord came out, it would not only cause great suffering. Lin Feng felt that if the endless ghost Sen Lord discovered him, he would be in for a bad time. His ancestor had suppressed the endless ghost Sen Lord. All these years, the endless ghost Sen Lord must have been filled with resentment. And wouldn't all this resentment be vented on him at that time? He would want to cry, but no tears would come out. So this jade pendant had to be destroyed. If it was destroyed, the endless ghost Sen Lord would be sealed forever until the end of the era. Chapter 3759. The Xianyuan ancient starry sky ship rose into the air, turned around, and flew in the direction of the Genu Immortal sect. Halfway through the flight, all of a sudden, a huge whirlpool appeared in the middle of the river. Next, the river gushed out. The river turned into a huge wave that swept towards the Xianyuan ancient starry sky ship. The Xianyuan ancient starry sky ship was powerful enough to disperse the huge wave. Roar! A loud dragon roar resounded through the world. A black demonic dragon rushed out of the river. When it stretched its body, it was at least 1,000 meters long. It looked like an Eastern divine dragon. Next, a large number of water tribe creatures rushed out of the Nile River and surrounded the Xianyuan ancient starry sky ship. Those inside, come out. The demonic dragon's cold voice rang out. Lin Feng walked out of the Xianyuan ancient starry sky ship. This demonic dragon should be an expert from the Nile River Dragon Palace. Why are you blocking this young master's way? Lin Feng asked indifferently. Kid, hand over the woman inside. Otherwise, you'll die a horrible death. The demonic dragon said coldly. The Dragon Palace controlled the millions of water tribe creatures in the Nile River. Lin Feng wasn't surprised to know that Meng Bingling was here. Lin Feng sneered. What's wrong? The Dragon Palace is also involved in this matter. I'm afraid you don't have the ability to do so. Suppress it for me. As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Feng waved his hand. Suddenly, a huge illusory immortal mountain appeared in the void. The illusory immortal mountain pressed down on the demonic dragon. Attack! The demonic dragon roared. A large number of water tribe creatures rushed towards the Xianyuan ancient starry sky ship. These water tribe creatures wanted to take over the Xianyuan ancient starry sky ship. At the same time, the demonic dragon opened its bloody mouth and spat out a dragon breath that filled the sky. A powerful dragon breath. It rushed towards the immortal mountain that Lin Feng had conjured. Boom, boom, boom. At this time, the Xianyuan ancient starry sky ship shot out a large number of giant spirit stone cannonballs. Those giant spirit stone cannonballs. Its power was terrifying to the extreme. With the support of the ancient starship Xuanyuan's top-notch emperor's runes, it was able to unleash a terrifying amount of power. It erupted with a terrifying power that was almost heaven-defying. Huge spiritual stone cannonballs landed directly in the midst of the aquatic tribe army. The huge spirit stone cannonball exploded, killing a large number of aquatic creatures. The Xianyuan ancient starry sky ship was a top-grade immortal ship with both offense and defense. They wanted to break through the ancient starship Xianyuan. It was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. And at this moment, Lin Feng's immortal mountain collided with the demon dragon's dragon breath. This was accompanied by an earth-shattering sound. Even the void was shattered. However, Lin Feng's immortal mountain was clearly superior. It directly broke the dragon's breath that the demonic dragon spat out. Then, it suppressed the demonic dragon. Bam! The demonic dragon's body exploded, and blood splattered everywhere. Roar! The demonic dragon let out a painful roar as its body rapidly plummeted downwards. There was a thump. The huge body fell directly into the Nile River. The ancient starship Xianyuan jumped through the void and left. Lin Feng returned to the ship's cabin. Meng Bingling was still in seclusion to heal her injuries. Her injuries were very strange. Lin Feng had already seen it before. Meng Bingling's meridians were injured. The most important thing was there was a corrosive power in her meridians. That corrosive power was constantly corroding Meng Bingling's meridians. Meng Bingling tried to swallow all kinds of healing pills. She couldn't suppress the corrosive power. Lin Feng also couldn't help Meng Bingling with her injuries for the time being. That corrosive power was too strange. It was Lin Feng's first time seeing that corrosive power. Therefore, Meng Bingling could only use her magic power to suppress that corrosive power. Then, she would return to the Genu Immortal Sect and think of a way to heal her injuries. Genu Immortal Sect. They had a strong foundation. Perhaps they could find a way to heal her injuries. That corrosive power, it seems to have its own spirituality. That's why her injuries are constantly worsening. It's really strange. Lin Feng couldn't help but frown slightly. That corrosive power was very terrifying. Meng Bingling tried her best to suppress it, but couldn't suppress it. Moreover, her injuries were getting worse and worse. If she didn't suppress it, she might lose her life in a short time. Lin Feng finally knew why Meng Bingling wanted him to escort her. If she didn't find someone to escort her, she wouldn't be able to reach the Zhenyu immortal sect alive. The Xianyuan ancient starry sky ship continued to fly in the void. Meng Bingling would occasionally wake up, but the situation was extremely bad. Her body was getting weaker and weaker. On this day, the Xianyuan ancient starry sky ship was attacked. Streaks of thick sword qi slashed out, tearing the void apart. A total of 36 sword qi completely surrounded the Xianyuan ancient starry sky ship. Clang! The sword qi slashed at the Xianyuan ancient starry sky ship. Suddenly, a sonorous collision sound was heard. The Xianyuan ancient starry sky ship's defensive restrictions shook violently. What a terrifying sword qi! Lin Feng was shocked. The other party had actually shaken the Xianyuan ancient starry sky ship's restrictions. His expression couldn't help but turn solemn. Lin Feng walked out of the Xianyuan ancient starry sky ship and said coldly, "Who is it? Get out here." "Kid, you've accepted a tricky mission. If you know what's good for you, you should choose to leave now." Cold laughter sounded. A black-clothed cultivator with a mask on his face stepped out of the void. After this person appeared, to the left, right, front, and back of the Xianyuan ancient starry sky ship, people appeared everywhere. Everyone was dressed in the same way. They wore black clothes, had their faces covered, and carried immortal swords on their backs. It was unknown who these people were. Since I've accepted this mission, I'll definitely send her over successfully. Lin Feng said indifferently. "You're the one who chose a path of no return," the black-clothed leader said. Buzz. The immortal sword on his back soared into the sky, and he grasped it in his hand. The others did the same. They took out their immortal swords and held them in their hands. "Those who obstruct the master from undoing the seal shall be executed." The black-clothed leader's expression was indifferent. He held his sword with both hands and slashed it at Lin Feng. Lin Feng frowned. When the black-clothed man said the word master, he had an incomparably devout expression. It was as if he was the most loyal believer. Lin Feng couldn't help but feel puzzled. This guy looked too abnormal. It was as if he had been converted by the master. Could it be these black-clothed men were actually being controlled? It wasn't necessarily the master himself who was controlling them. It was possible that some of the master's subordinates were controlling them. Lin Feng was shocked. If that was the case, the power of those terrifying beings in the endless ghost sand was much more terrifying than he had imagined. After the black-clothed leader made his move, the other 35 people also held their swords with both hands and slashed at Lin Feng. Streaks of dazzling sword qi condensed and formed. 36 sword qi merged into one in the void. Then that sword qi contained the power to destroy heaven and earth and slashed at the ancient starship Xianyuan. Puff! With a tearing sound, the ancient starship Xuanyuan's defensive restriction was broken by the joint attack of the 36 experts. After seeing this scene, Chapter 3760, the joint attack of the 36 experts was too powerful. Now, the defensive restriction was broken. Lin Feng had to go out and fight, and he had to do everything he could to hold back the 36 experts and even defeat them. He must not let them board the ancient starry sky ship Xianyuan, because the current Meng Bingling was suppressing the corrosive power in her body. She could not be disturbed at all. If she was disturbed, Meng Bingling might go berserk. At that time, Meng Bingling, she would die without a burial place. Lin Feng directly soared into the sky. Then, he displayed the 1 Qi 3 Pure Ones technique. Then, 3 Lin Feng. All of them displayed 3 layers of domineering aura. The 9 layers of domineering aura field superimposed. 36 black-robed men. Their cultivation suddenly plummeted. Everyone's battle power was weakened by at least 30%. Some people's battle power was even weakened by 50%. As Lin Feng's cultivation increased, the power of the 9 layers of domineering aura field also increased substantially, and the suppression of the 9 layers of domineering aura field on others. It was also greatly improved. What a terrifying technique. But it's difficult for you to completely suppress us. You guys follow me to surround this kid. The rest of you go inside the ancient ship and kill Meng Bingling directly and snatch that thing. The leading black-robed cultivator shouted in a deep voice. Then he led more than 20 people to kill Lin Feng. The other dozen people flew toward the ancient starry sky ship, Xianyuan. Seeing this scene, Lin Feng's face suddenly sank. Unfortunately, ever since the great desolate lands demon refining insects were destroyed, the second batch of great desolate lands demon refining insects had not been successfully cultivated. If the cultivation was successful, the great desolate lands demon refining insects would be enough to protect the ancient starry sky ship Xianyuan. But now, he could only rely on himself. Today, I'll let you have a taste of my power. Lin Feng's expression was ice cold. His sovereign emperor blood, his undying bloodline, had completely awakened. The golden figure formed when his undying bloodline was deeply awakened, also awakened. A large amount of energy gushed out of the golden figure, and all of that energy poured into Lin Feng's body, supporting Lin Feng's battle power. Meanwhile, the sovereign's armor was also activated, and it enveloped Lin Feng's entire body. A large amount of divine power surged out of the hegemon armor. Those godly powers. It also surged into Lin Feng's body. With the help of the golden dwarf and the sovereign's armor, Lin Feng's combat strength was raised to the extreme. The blade of dominion. Slash. Lin Feng roared and activated the blade of God in his dantian. This was a terrifying ability that Lin Feng had grasped when his sovereign bloodline had awakened to a deeper level. Because Lin Feng could at most multitask, it was naturally impossible for him to take out his magic treasure to fight against so many people. Because the other party had too many people, Lin Feng could only rely on the Blade of Dominion, a divine ability passed down through his bloodline, to contend against the 36 black-clothed men. Lin Feng's Blade of Domination was extremely terrifying. This was especially true for the Blade of Domination, which allowed it to continuously divide itself. At most, he could create 99 blades of domination. Of course, because of his own cultivation and the short amount of time he had awakened the Blade of Dominion. Lin Feng could only split the Blade of Dominion into 3, but if he counted the 2 clones, Lin Feng could create 9 blades of dominion. Because the Blade of Dominion was a divine ability he had obtained when his bloodline had awakened, this divine ability had a special characteristic. It also required the use of bloodline power to activate it. It could be said that this was a flaw of bloodline divine abilities. However, bloodline divine abilities also had some advantages that other divine abilities didn't have. For example, many divine abilities had cooldowns. For example, Lin Feng's Heaven Patching Technique and Great Death Substitution Technique had cooldowns of several days after they were used before they could be used a second time. For example, some other divine abilities had cooldowns after being used. Generally speaking, there were only 2 types of divine abilities that didn't have cooldowns. The first type was bloodline divine abilities. The second type was created with one's own Tao as the foundation. For example, Lin Feng's Sovereign Reincarnation Fist belonged to the second type of divine ability. Lin Feng's Blade of Dominion didn't have a cooldown, so he could use it continuously. Therefore, Lin Feng used it 4 times in a row. Every time he used it, Lin Feng's original body and clones could create 9 blades of dominion, and he used it 4 times in a row. A total of 36 blades of dominion were created. These 36 blades of dominion, they directly slashed towards the 36 black-clothed men. The blade of dominion was a divine ability that was created by combining bloodline and magic power. Its power was extremely terrifying. Of course, after using the blade of dominion 4 times in a row, Lin Feng felt that the magic power in his body had been consumed too much. His body felt very tired. The more powerful the divine ability was after it was used, the more it consumed the body. Therefore, during the battle, he would try his best to use these powerful divine abilities at the back. Because if he used such a powerful divine ability at the beginning of the battle, the opponent would also be in peak condition. It was very likely that they would be able to block his divine ability. And because he used such a powerful divine ability, his battle strength would decrease too much. At that time, wouldn't it be a dead end? But now Lin Feng had no choice but to use the powerful divine ability, the Blade of Dominion. After the 36 black-clothed men felt the terrifying power of the Blade of Dominion, their expressions couldn't help but change slightly. They didn't even dare to believe that this was really an attack released by a cultivator. One person against 36 people, and could still release such a powerful attack. It was really too incredible. The 36 black-clothed men didn't dare to underestimate Lin Feng's attack. They all moved to block the attack of the Blade of Dominion. At this moment, Lin Feng used his second unique skill, 3rd level of Supreme Aura, shattering heaven and earth. This was an attack that didn't discriminate. At this moment, the 36 black-clothed men had just collided with Lin Feng's Blade of Dominion. Many of them were sent flying by Lin Feng's Blade of Dominion. Of course, there were also some stronger black-clothed men who blocked the attack of Lin Feng's Blade of Dominion. However, whether it was the cultivators who were sent flying by the Blade of Dominion or those who blocked the attack of the Blade of Dominion, when they collided with the Blade of Dominion, Lin Feng had already used his shattering heaven and earth technique to attack the 36 black-clothed men indiscriminately, and most of them didn't have the time to deal with Lin Feng's powerful divine ability at this moment. So when the shattering heaven and earth technique descended, many of them were directly killed. Bang, bang, bang. The black-clothed men's bodies directly exploded one after another. 35 of the 36 black-clothed men died. Only the leader of the black-clothed men was still alive. However, the leader of the black-clothed men was also injured by Lin Feng's shattering heaven and earth technique. His body moved horizontally, and he vomited large mouthfuls of blood in midair. Lin Feng rushed forward and used his supreme reincarnation fist to kill the man. No, the leader of the black-clothed men screamed in horror. He couldn't dodge in time and was killed by Lin Feng's punch. Lin Feng stood in midair and panted heavily. This battle! He had used all kinds of methods. It was really too tiring. Lin Feng was also like a lamp that had run out of oil. But at this moment, the void split open. A dense mass of blood-red hair flew out from the void. The blood-colored hair was extremely terrifying. It directly pierced towards Lin Feng's body. Because Lin Feng had used up too much of his dermic powers, the sovereign's armor had already retracted back into his body. The attack of the blood-colored hair was too sudden. When the blood-colored hair pierced towards him, Lin Feng didn't even have time to react. Puchi, Chapter 3761. Lin Feng shouted loudly. Using his palm as a knife, he directly slashed at the blood hair that pierced through his body. Puff! The sound of tearing. Following that, it spread out. The blood hair that pierced through the body of Black Dragon. It was instantly cut off by Lin Feng. But that kind of blood hair was very strange. A part of the blood hair remained in Lin Feng's body, and the part of the blood hair that remained in Lin Feng's body wanted to completely destroy Lin Feng's body. The situation, it was very dangerous. Lin Feng's expression became solemn. His divine thought communicated with the 5 types of sky fire. 5 types of sky fire. Inside his body, it burned fiercely. A screech. The hair that was ignited by the sky fire actually let out a series of ear-piercing sounds. This made Lin Feng feel very shocked. Why would the hair that was cut off make such a sound? This was too strange. Fortunately, the sky fire was strong enough. It refined all the hair that had drilled into his body. At this time, a woman walked out of the void. That woman was wearing a white dress. Her face was very pale. She was as pale as a ghost. However, she was incomparably beautiful. This was a woman who was both beautiful and terrifying. The most creepy thing about her was her hair. The blood hair was 30,000 feet long. It danced wildly in the void. You cut off my hair. I have already forgotten the last time my hair was cut off. The woman's voice was extremely cold. After her voice fell. Then a strange scene appeared. The hair that was cut off by Lin Feng was actually reborn. After seeing this scene, Lin Feng couldn't help but reveal an expression of disbelief. Hair regrowth. What kind of technique was this? You are a creature that walked out of the endless ghost sand. Lin Feng took a deep breath and said, "That's right. Boy, you will become my slave." The blood-haired woman looked coldly at Lin Feng. Her head was covered in blood as she enveloped Lin Feng. Her bloody hair, it was as if it blotted out the sun. Each strand of blood-red hair could easily pierce through the void. Its power was simply too great. At the moment when he was attacking Lin Feng, the crimson-haired woman attacked Meng Bingling at the same time. The blood-red hair flew into the ancient starry sky ship Xianyuan. It wrapped around Meng Bingling. Meng Bingling was swept out by the blood-red hair. PFFF. Meng Bingling, who had been suppressing the corrosive power in her body, woke up and spat out a mouthful of blood. Her aura was weak and her situation was very bad. You took something you shouldn't have. He deserved to die 10,000 times for his sins. But I'll kill you directly. You really got off too easy. I should hand you over to the Lord and let the Lord decide how to deal with you." The crimson-haired woman said coldly, "Clang, clang, clang." At this time, Lin Feng wielded the black dragon sword and slashed at the strands of hair. But the hair was too terrifying. They were like divine weapons. It collided with Lin Feng's black dragon sword. The sound of metal clashing against metal could be heard. Lin Feng frowned. The crimson-haired woman's hair was too powerful. Divine weapons couldn't hurt it. So much hair. The threat was too great, and Meng Bingling was still entangled by the blood-red hair. He had to get rid of the crimson-haired woman quickly, or else it would be very dangerous, and Lin Feng's current situation wasn't particularly ideal. The previous battle, his magic power consumption was too severe, so he couldn't hold on for more than a few rounds. Lin Feng brought out the 5 heavenly fires. The 5 heavenly fires swept through the world, trying to burn the blood into ashes. Heavenly fire, and it's 5 heavenly fires. Your opportunity. It's really amazing. Meng Bingling looked coldly at Lin Feng. At this time, dense runes appeared on the surface of the blood-red hair. It was unknown what those runes were. Those runes formed a protective effect on the blood hair. Lin Feng's 5 heavenly fires couldn't even hurt the blood hair. Let's end this. The crimson-haired woman looked at Lin Feng indifferently, as if looking at an ant. endless blood hair flew toward Lin Feng. Those blood hair intertwined in the void. It actually formed an inescapable net. It directly wrapped around Lin Feng. Lin Feng suddenly had a feeling that he couldn't avoid it. If he was entangled by this inescapable net, at that time, he wouldn't be able to struggle. At this critical juncture, Lin Feng used the heaven patching technique. Swish! A light flashed. Lin Feng disappeared without a trace. The heaven patching technique played an important role at the critical moment. The inescapable dragon net, made of blood-red hair, missed its target. O mighty power of fate, please descend with the power of fate. Let me punish this evil creature that should have been sealed for eternity. Lin Feng stepped out of the void and appeared in front of the blood hair that wrapped around Meng Bingling. Lin Feng knew that the blood hair that was protected by the runes was almost impossible to cut off with divine weapons. So, he directly used the Great Destiny technique. This was the 3,000 Great Tao. It had an extremely heaven-defying effect. When the power of destiny summoned by the Great Destiny technique slashed at the blood hair that wrapped around Meng Bingling, the blood hair, it was directly cut off. Lin Feng directly held Meng Bingling in his arms and then took out a void teleportation talisman. Crack! Lin Feng crushed the void teleportation talisman. The next moment, he was teleported out. Can you escape? Seeing Lin Feng leave with the void teleportation talisman, the crimson-haired woman's eyes were cold. She shuttled through the void and quickly chased after him. My body feels so cold, Yi Zichen said. Meng Bingling's voice was very weak. Lin Feng carefully checked. He immediately discovered the corrosive power in Meng Bingling's body had begun to spread from her meridians to her organs. This was an extremely dangerous sign. Meng Bingling didn't have a body that could be reborn like Lin Feng. Once some of her vital organs were damaged, she was going to perish. Seeing the former goddess's pale and weak appearance, Lin Feng couldn't help but sigh. He carried Meng Bingling on his back. Then, he grabbed one of Meng Bingling's hands. Magic power continuously flowed into Meng Bingling's body, helping her suppress the terrifying corrosive power in her body. The void teleportation talisman could originally teleport a distance of 300 miles. However, the great heavenly sage world's spatial laws were stronger, so it could only teleport a distance of 100 miles. Lin Feng just flew out of the void. The crimson-haired woman shuttled through the void and chased after him. The crimson-haired woman's cultivation was too terrifying. Therefore, her speed was also frighteningly fast. You can't escape. Stay obediently and be my slave. Chapter 3762. In the void, a huge energy handprint condensed and formed. It charged towards Lin Feng at high speed. The energy palm was shockingly powerful. Lin Feng did not choose to clash head-on with the blood-haired woman. He took out a second void teleportation talisman and crushed it. Swoosh! There was a flash of light. Lin Feng and Meng Bingling disappeared once more. The blood-haired woman's attack landed in midair once more. Lin Feng liked looking for empty space jade and other spiritual treasures to make empty space teleportation talismans. It was to prepare for the worst. However, the materials needed to refine the void teleportation talisman were extremely precious. It was not easy to collect them. Still, Lin Feng had accumulated hundreds of void teleportation talismans over the years. And now, these void teleportation talismans were extremely useful. The next time Lin Feng appeared, he was already 100 miles away. Given the blood-haired woman's cultivation, Lin Feng would not be able to shake her off. Not long after, the blood-haired woman appeared again. She laughed coldly. Why struggle so futilely? If you become my slave now, you can still escape death. If you don't know what's good for you, you'll die." Lin Feng laughed coldly. "I do want to take you in as my slave. Now, I'll give you a chance. Acknowledge me as your master and become my slave. Otherwise, when your truly's cultivation increases, you'll die as well. Even if you cultivate for 10 million years, you can forget about catching up to my cultivation." The blood-haired woman sneered. "Does it feel good to brag about yourself?" Lin Feng laughed coldly. "Perhaps in a few years, I'll be able to trample you under my feet." Lin Feng was confident. He had always been a confident person. The blood-haired woman laughed coldly. "Do you know that the power in my body has been sealed for many years? The power we can use is only a small part of our total power. Once His Majesty comes out, our seals will be undone. At that time, who will be able to stand against Him? Even the 33 heavens of the heaven realm would tremble." Lin Feng was shocked by the crimson-haired woman's words. If what the blood-haired woman said was true, then the creatures in the endless ghost sand had most of their powers sealed, just like the blood-haired woman. It was hard to imagine how terrifying these existences were before they were sealed, especially their lord. Countless years had passed, but these living beings had always been loyal to their master. Clearly, the charisma of this lord was so great. His lord's strength was unimaginably powerful. If you know what it means to be afraid, stop right now. I'll give you one last chance. If you don't take it, I'll give you one last chance. Then, I can only let you fall into the endless hell and never be reincarnated." The crimson-haired woman's voice was filled with monstrous killing intent. She wanted to use this to threaten Lin Feng. But Lin Feng completely ignored the crimson-haired woman's threat. He took out a new void teleportation talisman. Then, he crushed the void teleportation talisman again. He and Meng Bingling were teleported out once again. The void teleportation talisman was still very useful. It could help Lin Feng temporarily get rid of the crimson-haired woman. And in this chase, Lin Feng's F.A. Li was also constantly recovering. Finally, his F.A. Li recovered to its original state. But Meng Bingling's situation was getting worse and worse. Her body was in great condition. Her meridians and internal organs. They were all damaged by the corrosive energy. Lin Feng's expression was very gloomy. He did not know what kind of creature injured Meng Bingling. If this continued, Meng Bingling would definitely not be able to make it back to the Genu immortal sect. When the crimson-haired woman chased again, she could feel the situation of Meng Bingling's body from afar. She sneered and said, "If you give her to me, I can let her live." Lin Feng sneered. If he really gave Meng Bingling to the crimson-haired woman, that would completely push Meng Bingling into the abyss. Lin Feng once again used a void teleportation talisman to temporarily get rid of the crimson-haired woman. He slit his wrist open. Then he let Meng Bingling suck his blood. The immortal god blood could repair the injured body and also heal all kinds of injuries. Lin Feng hoped that the immortal god blood could help Meng Bingling. After Meng Bingling swallowed some of the immortal god blood, Lin Feng found that the corrosive energy in her body was indeed suppressed by the immortal god blood. Meng Bingling's body seemed to be much better. She opened her eyes and saw everything. Her eyes became much gentler. She did not expect Lin Feng to help her like this. She had thought Lin Feng would leave her behind and escape by himself. But not only did Lin Feng not do that, instead, he fed her precious blood to help her suppress her injuries. What a loss! What a loss! If I had known, I would not have agreed to escort you. Do you know how many void teleportation talismans I lost? Do you know that I was almost beaten to death by that crimson-haired woman? Do Do you know how precious my blood is? I have a plan now. I'll just leave you here. When that crimson-haired woman sees you, she will definitely not cause trouble for me again." Lin Feng could not help but say. Meng Bingling's face was extremely pale, but she still smiled. She said, "I know you won't leave me behind. It seems that my taste is really good. I chose the right person." Lin Feng almost vomited blood. He said, "Your words are too ambiguous. Could it be that you have taken a fancy to me?" "Who would take a fancy to you?" Meng Bingling snorted. Her situation was still not ideal, because the corrosive energy had already damaged her body. The immortal god blood helped Meng Bingling temporarily suppress the damage to her body, but it could not heal the damage to her body. Thus, Meng Bingling quickly fell asleep. And for a period of time after that, Meng Bingling slept most of the time, only waking up occasionally. Every time, she would look at Lin Feng and wrap her arms around Lin Feng's neck even more tightly, as if she was afraid that Lin Feng would abandon her. Lin Feng used void teleportation talismans to teleport away. He used this to shake off the crimson-haired woman's pursuit. However, the crimson-haired woman continued to chase after Lin Feng. There was no way he could shake her off. In the end, in a forest about 200 kilometers away from the Genu Immortal sect, Lin Feng used up all of his void teleportation talismans. The crimson-haired woman caught up to him. "You can really run." "What? You used up all of your void teleportation talismans. Are you ready to die now?" The crimson-haired woman looked coldly at Lin Feng. The crimson-haired woman's 3,000 zhang long hair shattered the void like billions of divine weapons.